Start my video. All right. Councillors, please stand. Almighty God, we, the representatives of the citizens of the City of Brisbane, are assembled here to strive and care for the welfare of our city and all its people. Lord, we ask that you guide us in the decisions we make today. Amen. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay our respect to elders past and present. Please be seated. I remind all councillors of your obligations to declare material, personal and conflicts of interest where relevant, and the requirement of such to remove yourself from the council chamber for debate and voting where applicable. Are there any apologies? There appear to be no apologies. Confirmation of minutes, please. Councillor Landers.
Mr Chair, I move that the minutes of the 4,613th Ordinary and the 4,614th post-election meetings of Council held on Tuesday 11 February 2020 and Wednesday 22 April 2020 respectively be received, taken and read as confirmed.
And a seconder, please.
I'll second that.
Councillor Hutton. It's been moved by Councillor Landers, seconded by Councillor Hutton, that the minutes of the 4,613th Ordinary and the 4,614th post-election meetings of Council held on Tuesday, the 11th of February 2020 and Wednesday, the 22nd of April 2020, respectively, be received, taken as read and confirmed. All those in favour say aye or raise your hands. Thank you. And no, and raise your hands, please.
No.
Thank you. Councillors, I will now draw the Council's attention. Question time. Are there any questions of the Lord Mayor or Chair of any standing committee? Councillor Atwood.
My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, Brisbane City Council, along with the world, is facing unprecedented times with the COVID-19 pandemic. With Council due to deliver a budget in June, can you outline what the residents of Brisbane can expect?
Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Atwood, for the question. Certainly, preparations are going on right now for the budget. There's been a lot of work put into this preparation. I have to say, in all of the time I've been in council, this will be one of the most difficult budgets that we have seen in terms of the pressures on our budget, not only immediately but going forward as well. Our focus is to make sure that we don't add further pressure on the residents and ratepayers of Brisbane who are already doing it tough. And so that is the number one priority that we take to all of those budget discussions that have been happening. We have been very quick to respond immediately by announcing a $7.9 million relief package for local business and community groups. And that was done a number of weeks ago in March. But also as part of that, we made it clear that we would take a very reasonable approach in cases where people are under financial pressure and unable to pay their rates. We saw in April, from the start of April, rates notices starting to go out in accordance with the usual time frame. And since that time, we've seen already around 4,200 ratepayers contact council asking for some form of relief, and in particular the deferral of rates by up to 9 months. Now, 4,200 properties or landowners, and that's a mixture of both residential and commercial properties across the city. To put it in perspective though, that is less than 1% of all ratepayers. I expect that figure will continue to grow as more people become under pressure or more people become aware of their opportunity to defer rates. And so already to date, that's seen a deferral of up to $31 million in rates to those 4,200 property owners. We will continue to provide this opportunity to people and also to provide flexibility when it comes to payment options as well, so that where there's a deferral of rates, if there is, after that period, difficulty in repaying that amount that they have deferred, there will be opportunities for payment plans so that repayments can be made over an extended period of time based on the affordability to that ratepayer. And we will continue to show flexibility and empathy with the people of Brisbane in this time who are doing it tough. But ultimately, we as a council have a critical role to play when it comes to providing essential services to the city. Despite reductions in revenue that we might see in our budget, we still have to pick up the rubbish. We still have to mow the parks. We are still resurfacing the roads and fixing the footpaths and trimming the trees and maintaining the gardens and doing all of those things that we do across the city. They are essential and important services, and they must continue. And so we will continue to focus on delivering those services to the people and making sure that we do so in an affordable manner. Ultimately, though, in this budget, there will be some challenging decisions to be made. We will have to tighten the belt in many ways, and we will have to cut the cloth to measure to make sure that where there's a reduction in income coming into council, that we also reduce expenditure as well. And we'll do that in a way that wherever possible doesn't impact on those essential services that people rely on, but is the responsible thing to do. We have a proud record of making sure that our budget remains strong and balanced, and I'm absolutely committed to making sure that we manage the budget responsibly and that we provide a strong, balanced budget going forward, and we're working on that as we speak. Thank you for the question, Councillor Atwood.
Further questions? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question is for the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, 1 year ago, Labor initiated an urgency motion condemning all forms of domestic and family violence in our community and sought the development of a domestic and family violence prevention strategy for the city. This motion had bipartisan support, and we are aware Council has been preparing the new domestic violence strategy for the city. The reality is that 1 in 6 women have experienced violence by an intimate partner since the age of 15 in Australia. COVID-19 has presented new challenges for victims of domestic and family violence, with agencies reporting dramatic increases in requests for help since the pandemic commenced. Lord Mayor, when will the domestic violence strategy for the city be presented to Council for approval and implementation, and what other steps are you taking to address this scourge?
The Lord Mayor.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Cook, and it is certainly something that right across political lines that we are all committed to as a council. And that is why when you put forward that proposal last year, that it had the support of everyone across party lines. And it is, you know, when you look at the time that has gone past and what's happened since then, it is even more clear why we all need to do our part, both as individuals and as a council, to respond proactively to domestic violence and the impact it has in our community. And I want to pay particular tribute to the Clark family, who have, you know, the terrible tragedy that we saw with Hannah Clark and her 3 children, where they were brutally murdered by someone that was supposed to love them, has just reminded us all how very real the problem of domestic violence is across society in places where you may not expect it. And the Clark family lived literally around the corner from me in Carindale. I could throw a stone and reach their house from where I live. And that has touched us all and has reminded us why this is so important and why we need to do our part. But I can say I was having discussions just yesterday with my colleagues about the strategy and the next steps. And those discussions involved a chat with Councillor Adam Allen, who, as you know, is leading the charge on this strategy. And an important part of the discussion that I had with Councillor Allen is the feedback that had been received and what feedback we had received. And I specifically talked to him about discussions that he may have had with you, because I know that you are very personally interested in this, and your feedback is also very important. So I can confirm today that within weeks we will be bringing forward that strategy to Council so that we can all have a look at the feedback that's been provided and also endorse the draft to become a strategy that is in place. And so it is a matter of weeks away and something that we are absolutely committed to. So I thank you, Councillor Cook, for the question.
Further questions? Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question is to the Chair of City Planning Economic Development Committee, Councillor Adams. Deputy Mayor, can you please outline how the Schrinner administration is planning for the economic recovery of our city once the COVID-19 pandemic is over?
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wines, and thank you, Councillor Hammond, for the question. There is absolutely no doubt that there is going to be enormous financial impacts from this pandemic on Brisbane's economy, and to say it's going to be a challenge is, I think, an understatement. We are facing at least $1 billion loss across Brisbane businesses, the education sector, tourism and export operators, and even airport arrivals that have fallen sharply and will definitely bite on those industries that rely on visitors to our city as well. But I have every confidence in Team Schrinner. It is a big challenge, but it is a temporary one and one we are facing with strength and experience. Right now, it's important that we have the strong leadership team to manage the blow of this crisis on our economy and steer the city through the recovery. The Lord Mayor has established the Economic Recovery Task Force, which is being ably chaired by Councillor Adam Allen, and that will be the main guide in informing vital decisions, making steps towards rebuilding Brisbane's economy. Our focus more than ever now will continue to build Australia's most business-friendly city, and that is businesses across all industries, whether they be small, medium, or even large industries as well. Food and beverage, hospitality, tourism, education, building and construction, and everything in between. The main focus is local. Local business is the backbone of our economy, and it is our biggest employer in our capital city. We have developed a strong business continuity plan to keep serving the community and the small business. The Lord Mayor has already mentioned our $7.9 million business relief package to waive fees, charges and rents until June 30. We've also got a range of support tools and resources to engage with small business owners and help them to adapt and survive. The business hotline is still going 24/7 for all businesses, and this particular service is proving extremely vital in these uncertain times. Our business liaison officers are working around the clock to provide small business owners access to a team of advisors to help them build their sustainability in their business as they learn to pivot and regrow after this crisis. We're also ensuring that local innovators and creators are supported during this time by continuing to deliver programs that will upskill local entrepreneurs and grow their ideas. And in doing so, we are investing in not only our recovery, but the city's future and building a strong foundation for success going forward. The Lord Mayor's economic development support programs will continue to roll out and support new and emerging social enterprises, albeit many of those in new virtual forums as we're experiencing here today. The Maker Entrepreneurship Program, the Social Enterprise Accelerator and the GenU Youth Training Program will also transition to virtual platforms with online lessons and video calls replacing that traditional face-to-face training. But this will also give us new opportunities for things like the Social Accelerator pitch nights that we've had each year as well. These are vitally important programs to support our young people into employment and support our startups and entrepreneurs through this time. This is unlike the state government who've recently just updated their website but got caught out by saying they are reviewing future funding for their rounds of small business grants, which they have already told the successful recipients that they were going to get. They have said that they are essentially in caretaker mode at the moment at a time when they should be at our busiest. As the Lord Mayor mentioned, Cabinet sat yesterday on the public holiday because we have the business of the city front and foremost in our minds and are making sure that we work hard to deliver for the people of Brisbane in these times. That, of course, from the state government is not good news for the cohorts of businesses that had brilliant ideas but just needed a little bit of boost to get over the line. Not only are we continuing to run our platforms and our support, but unlike those at the other end of George Street, we have got new and innovative steps already in place. Our business webpage, which has long been our dedicated landing site for those in business, has now got the new Business in Brisbane Facebook group, connecting with business and raising awareness for a myriad of support tools and resources that Council has on offer as well. We know that supporting small business has been the focus of Team Schrinner for some time now. Mid last year, Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner introduced the new local buy procurement policy.
Excuse me, Deputy Mayor, I think there's a point of order. Is that what you're doing, Councillor Johnston?
No, but the 5 minutes must be up by now.
No.
No, I don't think so. There's still some time left. So no, that was not a point of order.
10 seconds.
Councillor Adams. Councillor Adams, please continue.
Thank you, Councillor Wines. I was just sorting my mute button out. Lord Mayor also launched the Brisbane Buy Local Blitz earlier this year to encourage all of us to think about how we can support our locals by spending our money at our local stores. I'm confident the residents of Brisbane will push back hard and come together to support local business, and we will too.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Griffiths.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question's to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, just refer to the purchase of Council's South Regional Business Centre in Urong-Pili by a West Australian company. Ratepayers will now be forced to pay rent to this West Australian company on land they once owned, increasing by 3.5% a year regardless of the prevailing inflation rate. According to media reports, Brisbane City Council is locked in as a tenant potentially until 2037, with rent rising each and every year. Given ratepayers once owned this land, how is this a good deal for them?
Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Look, it shouldn't surprise Councillor Griffiths that the building that most council employees are in at the moment, Brisbane Square, is not owned by council. It shouldn't surprise Councillor Griffiths that the building that the second largest number of council employees are in, Green Square, is not owned by council. And the reason we have that arrangement in place is because when Councillor Griffiths and his colleagues were in office, they sold off the Brisbane Administration Centre, which was the building behind City Hall, which is now the Telstra building. So for Councillor Griffiths to suggest that there's somehow something unusual for council renting premises, it is clearly not the case. What happens is, in each situation where accommodation is required, council assesses its options. And in this particular option with the South Regional Business Centre, we had the City of Brisbane Investment Corporation build the building for council's requirements, and they made the investment up front to build that building, and now they are getting a significant return on that building with the transaction that Councillor Griffiths has mentioned. Now, CBIC exists as a future fund for the City of Brisbane, and in fact, every dollar of dividend that City of Brisbane Investment Corporation makes coming back to council goes into our Green Future Fund, which provides support for the purchase and provision of parkland across Brisbane. It's about creating new parkland and improved parkland opportunities. So when CBIC does a deal like the one that we've done or they've done in relation to the South Regional Business Centre, the profits and the dividends that come from that have the opportunity to be reinvested in parkland. And it is my understanding that CBIC, through their independent board, have done a very good deal for ratepayers to make sure that the investment they made up front has paid off handsomely with this transaction, and that money then can be reinvested into providing more parkland and better parkland across the city. So City of Brisbane Investment Corporation has an important role. They did the same thing when it came to Roy Harvey House. You'll remember when City Hall was closed for renovations, City of Brisbane Investment Corporation purchased a building that is now known as Roy Harvey House, just up the road. Council temporarily relocated into that building, and once our need for that building no longer existed, they sold that building on the private market at a significant profit. And so that money, once again, was able to be reinvested back to the benefit of the ratepayers of Brisbane. So I absolutely support the role that City of Brisbane Investment Corporation provides when it comes to investing on behalf of the ratepayers of Brisbane to help us generate and produce more parkland, to help us improve and upgrade parkland, to help us buy land to convert into new parkland. And this deal that has been done will make sure that we can...
How much?
This deal that has been done will make sure that we can provide more parkland in the future for people of Brisbane, which is a fantastic outcome.
How much?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Owen.
Thank you. My question is to the Chair of the Public and Active Transport Committee, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Murphy, during this unprecedented time, can you please update the Chamber on what public and active transport options are available to residents during this time?
Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Owen for the question. It's a very timely question given the state government's announcement today that school will be back. It means that travelling by public and active transport will continue to be a very popular option for Brisbane residents to take. In terms of public transport, the early steps that Council took to ensure that our fleet and our staff weathered the impacts of COVID-19 has ensured that we are ready to roll when the lockdown lifts. The positive approach taken by Council in starting a proactive cleaning regime, encouraging social distancing as well as contactless transactions has ensured that both passengers and staff on our buses as well as our City Cats ferries and City Hoppers know that it's safe to ride. All this while we've been ensuring the safety and welfare of vulnerable and at-risk staff in Transport for Brisbane who were at risk from COVID-19. They've been redeployed to other tasks or they've taken advantage of Council's generous leave provisions. This administration, Chair, from the Lord Mayor down, knows that our staff are our greatest asset, and it's only through them that we can deliver public and active transport outcomes for the residents of Brisbane. But how has active transport fared during COVID-19? Well, we're continuing to invest in active transport options to make the most of our great outdoor lifestyle, and I think we're all loving this cooler wintry weather that we have at the moment. This financial year, Council committed $25.5 million to help deliver 4 key signature bikeways and river walks. Woolloongabba Bikeway was completed 4 months ahead of schedule. Residents now have a continuous cycling corridor from the University of Queensland to QUT Gardens Point, the Bicentennial Bikeway and Velaway 1 Bikeway delivered by the state government. Kangaroo Point Bikeway completes an important link between the city centre and the southern, southeastern and eastern suburbs. Botanic Gardens Riverwalk has improved accessibility to the CBD and local destinations for cyclists and pedestrians. We know the people of Brisbane love riverwalks, and Council recently upgraded the Mariners Reach Riverwalk and the Brett's Wharf Riverwalk completed in January. We have been constructing the very popular Laura's Bonnie Riverwalk along the Brisbane River as part of the Kingsford Smith Drive upgrade. Completed in December last year, this year already more than 220,000 cyclists and pedestrians have enjoyed that access to our riverfront. And now we've started work on the iconic Indooroopilly Riverwalk, enthusiastically welcomed by local residents there. And I know that Councillor Mackay is very much looking forward to that work progressing. And it's good news because we're seeing a dramatic uptake in the number of people cycling recently. While public transport patronage has decreased by 87% at the bottom of the trough, our bikeways have never been more popular. Across the city, there's been a 22% increase in weekday cyclists and a 91% increase over the weekend. That includes a 47% increase on commuter bikeway routes. The most recent stats from Kangaroo Point and the Bicentennial Bikeway counters indicate an increase of 12 to 20% on weekdays and 70 to 80% on weekends. In terms of pedestrians, there's been a 50% increase in weekdays and weekends. The most significant increases have been on suburban pathways, which have seen significantly greater use by people walking and cycling. This is validated by data captured online through corporate communications. Our Cycling Brisbane online map is up by a third, as is visitation to our bikeway information pages, including our Rides to Try, which is up 18%, as people seek places to ride to get some exercise. I met with the Bicycle Queensland CEO, Rebecca Randazzo, last week, and she provided me some very interesting statistics on the commercial side. For example, the sale of cycling helmets is up 300% at Brisbane Bike Store 99 Bikes. Children's bike sales are up 400% and helmet sales are up 200%. So it's great to see many people opting for pedal power in their daily commute. Meanwhile, City Cycle and e-scooters, sanitised daily, continue to provide an affordable and sustainable travel option for residents, particularly as it comes to last mile transport. Team Schrinner will continue to focus on projects that create jobs and stimulate the economy, and that will also build on the momentum that's been gathered in active transport so far. With Brisbane Metro underway and design work now advancing steadily on our 5 new green bridges, there's never been a more exciting time for public and active transport in our city's history. We're tackling traffic congestion, we're improving transport options, we're promoting economic development, and we're enhancing lifestyle and leisure opportunities, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Further questions? Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, in this year's budget, you announced $488,000 to replace the footpath through the Annerley Junction Shopping Centre on the eastern side of the street. Council commenced this work around Christmas and into January, but I've now been advised that you have cancelled the project, and the section between Dudley Street and Eckerburn Road, promised by you personally in the budget when it was an LNP ward, has now been cancelled. Given you already ripped off Tennyson Ward residents by not doing the western side of the street, why are you now shortchanging Annerley residents who have moved from an LNP ward into a Labor ward and failing to complete the project you promised in the budget?
Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston, for the question. The first thing I would do is reject and question the assumption and the assertions that you've made, because I do not know that that is the case. In fact, you telling me this is the first that I've heard about it. So there's always conspiracy theories flying around, and you know, you're very good at perpetuating these sort of things. But I can tell you, this is news to me, and I'm happy to have a look at it for you. But certainly, what you say has happened has not necessarily happened, and that has been borne out by questions year after year, where the claims that you make in this place turn out not to be always
point of order.
accurate.
Point of order, Councillor Johnston.
The Lord Mayor should be aware I've already sent this to the media based on the formal written advice of the council officers. So
Okay,
please don't call me a liar.
No.
Not okay.
No, do not use points of order to litigate the question you've just asked. This is not how it works. You've asked your question, you're receiving an answer, the answer is on topic. Please do not use points of order to relitigate your question or make a second point that you didn't make in your first question. And that's not something I say only to Councillor Johnston, that's something I say to all councillors. All right.
Well, point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order, Councillor Johnston.
Yes, the Lord Mayor is adversely reflecting upon my motives in asking a question on behalf of Annerley residents, and I would ask that he withdraws that information. Calling me a liar is not appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
We went over this last week. The Lord Mayor is answering your question. As I said last week, no one is to use the sort of language that you've indicated, and the Lord Mayor hasn't used that type of language.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you like me to continue?
Yes, please.
Yes, and certainly I never used any of that language that Councillor Johnston is suggesting. I was simply pointing out that she has made claims in the chamber, in council meetings, which then do not turn out to be accurate upon investigation. So I am not assuming that she's making correct assertions here. I will go and have a look at this. But talking about adverse reflections, I think the whole nature of your question was adversely reflecting on someone there, Councillor Johnston. And the reality is I haven't been sitting there with a red pen looking at a footpath project that's happening in your ward. There's no conspiracy here. I am simply saying that I will have a look at this matter that you have raised. This is the first I recall of this situation, and I don't recall anyone ever raising it with me. And just because a council officer might have made a decision or have told you something doesn't mean that it's something that I've told them to do as well. This is a big organisation. There are 10,000 employees in this organisation, and not all 10,000 employees pick up the phone to me and say, "Oh, I'm going to cancel a project in Councillor Johnston's ward. Are you okay with that, Lord Mayor?" That's not the way it works. So I can simply say that I will have a look at this matter for you, and I'm proud of funding footpath upgrades and road improvements in your ward, and road resurfacing and other important improvements in your ward, like I am right across the city, across the 26 wards.
Right, further questions? Councillor Landers.
Chair. My question is to the Chair of the Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee, Councillor Howard. Councillor Howard, can you please update the Chamber on how Council's libraries are continuing to operate under the COVID-19 closures?
Councillor Howard.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Landers. And can I take this opportunity to congratulate you on your appointment as Deputy Chair of the Community Arts and Nighttime Economy Committee. I'd also like to put on record my thanks to Councillor Peter Maddock for his strong leadership and for his incredible work in ensuring the delivery of the most important council services of this committee. I'm honoured and privileged with the opportunity to continue to serve as not only as the councillor for Central Ward but also as the chair, and I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you. I have the pleasure of working closely with the passionate and dedicated officers of Council's Lifestyle and Community Services Division, who work extremely hard day in, day out to deliver for the residents of Brisbane. Our officers, and I can say this quite honestly, pour their heart and soul into their work, and that has never been made clearer than in the past weeks and months as they've gone above and beyond to keep our city moving forward during these unprecedented circumstances. And a great example of that has been the way in which our libraries team has risen to the challenge of this pandemic. The pace at which they have mobilised to adapt to the challenges of this pandemic has been nothing short of incredible. COVID-19 may have changed the way of life for many of us, but it has not stopped our libraries from engaging with the residents of Brisbane and overcoming the challenges of social distancing. We are proud to lead Australia's largest library service right here in Brisbane with more than 480,000 library memberships. And our membership has only continued to grow through this pandemic, with more than 4,000 new digital memberships created since the city's 33 libraries closed on the 23rd of March. When library doors shut, we were ready to rise to the challenge with new virtual offerings and our existing e-library service becoming more popular than ever before, with a 20% increase in e-book borrowing. Our online library remains open 24/7 to ensure that Brisbane's love of reading can go on unabated, with more than 150,000 e-books, e-audiobooks, e-magazines, music and video streaming services available for residents, all for free. Of course, our libraries are more than just a book borrowing service, and one of our most treasured library services are the events that we hold in our libraries, including our beloved Writer in Residence program, which continues to be delivered through new virtual offerings. Our libraries are releasing a new video every second morning via the Brisbane Library's Facebook page, and this is also available through the online library catalogue. And they've been a huge success, engaging more than 115,000 views so far on our Facebook page alone. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that our children's storytime sessions have been the most popular of these new virtual offerings. Of course, safety, as always, is our top priority, and this has taken centre stage for our library staff, who are working through the mammoth task of cleaning more than 500,000 library items. In the final week of opening, more than 300,000 physical items were borrowed from our libraries, more than double the loans of an average week. We have nearly 370 library staff across Brisbane sanitising each and every library book that has been returned to ensure they are safe and clean for residents when our libraries reopen. To date, we have cleaned more than 100,000 returned books, each one going through a strict 3-day quarantine process and is then thoroughly sanitised before being returned to the shelves. We've also expanded our at-home library service, and so the cleaning of physical library books is even more crucial when it comes to delivering library items to the homes of our most vulnerable residents. It's not easy for everyone to access online services, especially our vulnerable community members, our elderly residents, people with a disability, and people who are severely ill. And that is why we've made changes to eligibility, so it's easier for people to sign up to our free at-home library service. I'm pleased to advise that we've had more than 200 new residents take up the chance to get library items delivered to their homes. If you are aware of someone in your community who would benefit from this service, please get in touch with our lovely libraries team. And if you are keen to check out Council's online services and you are not currently a member, you can jump online to Council's library website and apply for a digital membership to take advantage of our digital collection. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our library staff for the incredible work that they do and to thank the residents.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I refer to the purchase of the South Regional Business Centre in Yurong-Pili by a West Australian company. Is this council planning to sell off any other CBIC-held ratepayer assets, such as the Wynnum and Chermside libraries, to plug the hole in your budget caused by overruns on projects such as Metro and Kingsford Smith Drive?
The Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Look, the election's over, so you can stop talking about false claims about Kingsford Smith Drive. As you know, the project is on budget. The project has taken more time than we anticipated, but it is on budget. Like I said, the election's over. You can stop peddling those mistruths. That's simply not the case. But what I can say is Council didn't sell anything. CBIC has an independent board. They are an investment fund.
Who owns it?
Set up by the City of Brisbane to make sure that there are returns generated for the city, which can go into the investment in parkland and the provision of better and more parkland facilities. So I can't speculate on what decisions CBIC may make in the future, but I know they have an incredible record when it comes to providing returns
selling assets
to Brisbane.
Interjections.
They were started with initial seed funding of around 135 million, and not only has the fund grown massively, they've also paid more than 130 million in dividends back to the people of Brisbane, which have gone into capital infrastructure and building work. So they have taken that original 130 million investment, they've grown it, and they've put 130 million extra back into council, and the size of the fund at the moment is around 283 million, and that is a real future fund for the City of Brisbane, which delivers. It's a great outcome. Now, we know Labor's approach to money. They get their hands on it and it falls through their fingers like sand. They can't keep the money. They can only spend money. They can't invest money. They can only lose money. When it comes to budget blowouts, you only just have to look up the road at George Street to see the world champions at budget blowouts. We just read the other day they've had a $500 million blowout in an IT project. So Labor know all about budget blowouts because they are the world champions at budget blowouts, but they can't manage money and they can't see a good deal when it hits them in the face. And what CBIC have delivered is good deal after good deal, which has allowed us to grow this future fund, which can then go back into services and park improvements for the people of Brisbane. Now, I remember when CBIC was set up, I was actually the finance chair at the time, and the decision at the time was always opposed by Labor. And that $135 million to start up the fund would have been spent in a year or two by Labor if they had their way, and there would be nothing to show for it. Yet, I gave you the record of CBIC. There is $283 million in the fund at the moment. Plus, on top of that, they have paid more than $130 million of dividends to the people of Brisbane. So we have taken that $130 million. It's been paid back to the people of Brisbane already. Plus, there is still $283 million left in the fund that will continue to grow under the great stewardship of the independent board of CBIC, who have continued to make smart investment decisions and continued to grow the fund to the benefit of the people of Brisbane and the ratepayers of Brisbane, and in particular now, going forward, to the benefit of those who appreciate parks in our city and green space in our city and want to see more of it and want to see better parks and more parks right across the city. So rather than bagging out what is a smart investment decision by CBIC, you should be saying thank you to that independent board for their smart and responsible stewardship of the fund, which has seen it grow and which has seen it provide major dividends back in return to the people of Brisbane. And so a thank you to the board would be in order, Councillor Cassidy. And I can tell you, back to the point of your question, I can't speculate on what the independent board may or may not do in the future. All I would like to see from them is they continue managing that fund responsibly. They continue delivering good, solid returns to the people of Brisbane. That's what they've done to date, and that's what I expect them to do in the future.
Further questions, Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Chair of City Standards, Community Health and Safety Committee, Councillor Marks. Councillor Marks, can you please update the Chamber on Council's core responsibilities within Council standards and how hardworking Council officers are ensuring our rubbish continues to be collected and the grass continues to get mowed?
Councillor Marks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Toomey. I appreciate you providing me with an opportunity to update the councillors on the responsibilities of the City Standards Community Health and Safety Committee. I gave a very brief overview this morning in committee on what this new portfolio was about. So it's a great opportunity to let all the councillors know. It's also an excellent opportunity for me to assure the residents of Brisbane that the core business of the new committee is ongoing in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic. City Standards Community Health and Safety logically incorporates two of Council's largest operational arms into one portfolio, namely Field Services and Compliance and Regulatory Services. As you'll all know, Field Services provides construction and maintenance services across Brisbane's civil and greenways assets in conjunction with the management of significant service contracts for waste and cleansing services. To give you some of the idea of the volume of the service we deliver, last year Field Services was responsible for removing over 70,000 graffiti tags, cutting over 78,000 hectares of grass in parks and road corridors within our city and suburbs, servicing over 30 million wheelie bins and processing over 86,000 tonnes of recycled materials. And I want to reassure residents that all those services will continue during this time of crisis. The program area has adapted quickly and responsibly to the COVID-19 pandemic. In some cases, on-the-ground service delivery practice has evolved to adhere to all advice provided by state and federal health authorities. The compliance and regulatory service component of the portfolio has also been quick to adapt. The roles of CARS is to lead, enable and protect the health, safety and amenity of Brisbane through a range of licensing and regulatory services. These relate to environmental health, land use, built environment, animal management, graffiti reduction, amenity, livability and the use of council land and assets and the natural environment. CARS also manages Council's 2 animal rehoming centres, both of which specialise in animal welfare, rehoming and retraining animals. To give you some of the idea of the work CARS is involved with, annually CARS will receive over 27,000 permit applications, respond to over 100,000 customer reports and respond to over 38,000 requests for permit and technical advice. They also do many auditing and licensing of the food businesses and respond to the environmental health complaints. In March, the Lord Mayor announced that Council would waive all charges, rents, levies and permit fees for all businesses as they face economic hardship caused by coronavirus impacts. The $7.9 million business relief package applies to businesses and council lessees who will have a range of fees and charges waived for the next 3 months. I'm pleased to lead the area of council responsible for the implementation of the Lord Mayor's announcement. Small and large businesses are the backbone of our economy, but also one of our biggest employers. They are staring down financial uncertainty, the likes of which they have never seen before. We will do everything we can to support our businesses through this extraordinary time, and business charges, rent, fees or permits required to be paid will be waived until at least the 30th of June 2020. And I thank the Lord Mayor for this extraordinary initiative that he is leading our Brisbane City through these difficult times. Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Shree.
Thanks, Chair. My question's to the Mayor, and I might start by just congratulating the Mayor on his re-election. This question's going to sound a little bit like it's a party political game, but it's not. I'm genuinely interested in your thoughts on the answer because I'm quite keen on your perspective. As you would have noticed, the Greens vote increased noticeably across Brisbane in the recent council election. So apart from our shared commitment to new footbridges in West End and Kangaroo Point, were there any particular policy announcements from the Greens that you thought seemed to be popular with residents? And to what do you attribute the general increase in the Greens vote around the city?
Well, this will be good.
The Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shree, for the question, and congratulations on your re-election as well. Well done, and I echo once again congratulations to all of the re-elected councillors and our 2 newly elected councillors as well. Look, I'm no election commentator. We all have a view on what might have generated the election results and different factors that might be behind it. So I'm not going to go into speculation or commentary, but I would simply say this. There are some areas where Greens policy aligns with LNP policy. There are some areas where all 3 parties align when it comes to policies. And this is not unusual. And if you look at the voting record in council, it throws some light on the fact that while media attention often focuses on what we disagree on, a lot of the submissions that come through have bipartisan or tripartisan support. And I have no doubt that will continue. So whether it's things like green bridges or investment in public transport and Brisbane Metro and new bikeways and cycling infrastructure and pedestrian improvements, these are all things that we do agree on. And these are areas of common interest and support. And that is a good thing. It is a good thing. But there are certainly some areas that we don't agree on. And I wanted to point those out today because the Greens policy, I think, that you brought to the election that caused the most concern was policies that see taxes and levies increasing on certain groups of people. And I think when it comes to levies on vacant property, for example, right now the last thing anyone should be doing is levying landowners when they're already under massive pressure, and increasing taxes on various targeted people. I don't think is necessarily the way to go at this point in time. Ultimately, though, I go back to my original point, which was there is a lot of commonality across the 3 parties, and in contrast to the media reporting often, we do agree on a lot of things, and I have no doubt that will continue. But those areas of disagreement are important because that's where you put your stake in the ground and draw the line in the sand, and say, well, we don't stand for higher charges on landlords in the way that you've suggested, or we don't stand for making development in Brisbane or the creation of new houses completely unaffordable by increasing taxes and charges on people that are building new homes. And that's the reality. You saw this type of philosophy played out at the federal government.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order to you, Councillor Shree.
Just on relevance, the Mayor's answering the opposite of my question. I was keen to understand what Greens policies the Mayor thought were popular with residents in the recent council election.
I think the nature of the question is those which were popular, and I think there's an implication which were not is also there as well. So, Lord Mayor.
I was pointing out that there are some commonalities in the agenda that all three sides brought to the, well, at least two sides. I can't speculate on what a Labor Party agenda was because they didn't actually have an agenda at this election. They just threw mud. But at least the Greens did have an agenda, and there was some commonality there between some of the things that we support, like the green bridges, for example, investment in metro and public transport, bikeways. So they are things that I think are popular, and they are things that the community as a whole supports. But I was simply pointing out, some of the areas that we also probably disagree on, or that may not have been popular. And I don't think it is popular to make housing completely unaffordable by increasing charges on people that construct new homes. And that's effectively what the Greens policy would have done. And I was pointing out that it was similar in some ways to the mining tax at the federal level, which was introduced, and it was supposed to generate a whole heap of extra income for the government by taxing mining companies more. And, guess what happened? No extra money was generated out of it because it affected the feasibility of projects, and they simply didn't happen. And that is exactly what some of the Greens policies, I believe, would do. It might sound politically popular to say, let's increase charges on developers, but there's got to be a balance there. It is important that when developments happen, that developers pay their fair share, but those charges are being passed on to the buyers of those homes. And so it's not the developers themselves paying the charges.
Lord Mayor, your time's expired, and that concludes question time. Councillors, can I please draw your attention to item 4 on the agenda, consideration of committee reports. Lord Mayor, the Establishment and Committee Report of 27th of April 2020, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move that the Establishment and Coordination Committee meeting, the report of the Establishment and Coordination Committee meeting held on Monday, 27th of April 2020 be adopted.
Seconded.
It's been moved by the Lord Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that the report of the Establishment and Coordination Committee meeting dated Monday, the 27th of April be adopted. Is there any debate? The Lord Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr Chair. As Councillor Cook raised earlier in the meeting, it's important to point out that the month of May, is Domestic Violence Prevention Month. And to pay tribute to those who have lost their lives through domestic violence, and to bring further awareness to this very, very important issue, the Victoria Bridge, Sandgate Town Hall and the Story Bridge will be lit purple and green tomorrow. And this light-up has been organised by DV Connect, who are hosting the 15th annual Candlelight Vigil by an online vigil this year as well. And the vigil, like the lighting up of those assets, helps to raise awareness of domestic and family violence, sending a message that it is not okay and that help is available. The Victoria and Story bridges will be lit up in yellow tonight in support of the eve of Wishbone Day. And the OI Society of Australia aims to offer information and support to individuals and families affected by OI, encourage and support and research and awareness as well. And OI is effectively a condition of brittle bones that affects some people. And this is all about raising support of that condition, and that, once again, that there is research occurring and that there are organisations that exist to help people that suffer from brittle bones. Thursday marks World Ovarian Cancer Day, and the Victoria Bridge and Story Bridge and Radcliffe Place, as well as the Tropical Dome, will be lit up in teal to support and bring awareness to this disease. Ovarian cancer currently only has a 46 survival rate beyond 5 years, making it the deadliest form of women's cancer. So this day is all about bringing attention to the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer so that more people can be aware of it earlier to help increase that survival rate. On Friday, we have the 2020 Cornflower Blue Day, which shines a light on motor neurone disease, and the Motor Neurone Disease Association of Queensland is absolutely committed to supporting and maintaining the quality of life of all people living with motor neurone disease in Queensland. And to show our support, the Victoria Bridge, Redcliffe Place, will be lit up in blue on Friday. In terms of the items that are before us on the agenda, so we have in the formal E&C item A, which is the contracts and tendering report. And once again, all contracts that were awarded in the month of January this year have been brought through in the normal way for councillors to have a look at, and we continue to invest in important works and upgrades that benefit the City of Brisbane, including a project with related to the Montague and Victoria Street intersection upgrade, which is the first contract on the list, and that's about making sure we do service work and utility work in preparation for that really important upgrade, which was funded in the last budget. And there are a whole range of other contracts there that relate to important projects, including item 4, which is related to program management for Brisbane Metro. And there's a $4.5 million investment in further progressing Brisbane Metro and making sure that we have the very best possible program management services in place. And you can see by the number of organisations that put forward proposals there was very strong interest and also very strong interest when it comes to shortlisted offers as well from some great companies to help us get on with delivering that project. I won't go through each of the contracts by themselves, but one that I did want to also point out was the Forest Lake Rehabilitation Aquatic Plant Supply, Planting and Maintenance program. Obviously, it's been a bad period for the water quality at Forest Lake, and those climatic conditions have very much worked against us out there. And so we are very aware of the situation and the impacts on Forest Lake residents, and we continue to progress with the work that we have committed to improve the water quality of the lake, and also through that improvement in water quality, help address some of the related issues such as odour as well. So that work continues. We have had equipment out there pulling out tons of weeds, and that work will continue as well because we are absolutely committed to working with the community and also with the local councillor, Councillor Strunk, to make sure that we have a better outcome for the residents of Forest Lake. It's one of the many contracts coming through. Item B is the report of the Audit Committee, and item C relates to the meeting date schedule for the remainder of 2020. Obviously, this is something that's traditionally done in the wake of an election to set the meetings and the agenda for the rest of the calendar year. And I have to say, we would be able to normally fit an extra meeting in, but the delay in the declaration of the election has obviously conspired against us. But unlike other levels of government who have effectively cancelled Parliament, we continue to meet, and we continue to make sure that all councillors can be involved in that. And I think that's a really good thing. We are not cancelling council, just like they've done up the road at George Street, where they've cancelled Parliament and only some people get to participate. we think it's important for our regular meetings to go on as per normal on a Tuesday afternoon, and that will continue. And as you can see, we've outlaid the schedule of meetings for the remainder of the calendar year here, and we'll continue meeting, even if it is via Zoom, to make sure that everyone can participate. Item D is obviously related to that, and that is the good order of video conferencing of council and committee meetings guidelines. So the guidelines in how these meetings will operate in this unique situation that we're in. And finally, item E, which relates to an amendment to the 2020 approval deadline for the Suburban Enhancement Fund policy. Now, I mentioned earlier that the delay to the declaration of the election had caused some issues in terms of council meetings. It's also caused some issues when it comes to council policies, and we've specifically had to change a policy because of the delay in the declaration of the election. So this one allows councillors a little bit of extra time to submit their projects for approval before the deadline. Otherwise, if we didn't have this submission coming through, there's a couple of important projects that would have missed out. So we're amending the policy to give people a little bit of extra time in this circumstance, given the delay to the declaration of the election. And I think that's a positive thing that is a common sense outcome given the circumstance we're in. So, Mr. Chair, thanks. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. Just at the outset, could I ask that a few of these items be taken seriatim for voting?
Yes.
So, A by itself, B and D together, and C and E together.
So could you please say that again? I'm just going to repeat what I've got. A alone, then B and D, and then C and E. Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So A by itself, B and D together, and C and E together.
Thank you. I'm just going to repeat that just for clarity. Items that will be voted on, seriatim, A alone, B and D together, C and E together. Please continue, Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks. Thank you. Just have some specific questions on contracts that hopefully someone in debate will be able to answer. Contract number 3, the Intelligent Transport Systems, Technical Advisory Services of Brisbane Metro, $5.2 million. Looks to be some sort of signalling or communication between existing bus operating systems and the new Metro, but whether that can be confirmed, what exactly contract 3 is for. Contract 4, the Lord Mayor touched on this one. There is in there at the second note below the contract includes provisional amounts for $100,000 for organisation-wide capability development and a $396,000 Green Bridges program allocation for the initial term. Is this allocation out of the Green Bridges program into the Metro, meaning that the Victoria Bridge, as it's being renamed the Green Bridge, now becomes one of the 5? So in fact, the 5 new Green Bridges potentially becomes just 4 new Green Bridges. Some clarification on that would be appreciated. Contract number 5, the River Hills Public Pontoon, just over $1.1 million, and Viro Struct Services have been given the contract for this one. Is this pontoon being built locally, unlike the New Farm Park City Cat terminal that was built a couple of years ago, which was prefabricated in China? Given since that time, we now have the buy local program, so I assume this is all locally constructed, but if you could confirm that, please. Contract number 9 is for stormwater harvesting 2018 to 20 package 2. The successful tender is listed for $414,000, but not where the project or projects will be located. So if we could get whether that's one project for $414,000 or a couple of them, if we could get the locations of that, please. And contract number 15, in-vehicle management system, which is with Navman Wireless Australia Pty Ltd, for over $8.5 million. So I presume this contract is for a navigation a system to track the movement of council's vehicles. We'd like some clarification on what that information will be used for. We have heard some horror stories of how this tracking information has been used to target individual staff members within council, and then put through a show cause notice, which amounts to basically a kangaroo court, and then those staff members are shown the door. We would want to see and receive an explanation here today publicly what the reason is for such a large amount of money being spent here. Of course, keeping a track of council's assets is one thing. What are the guidelines and the policies around the use of this information? We would like a better explanation on, I think. Moving on to item B, the report of the Audit Committee. We've had concerns about the Audit Committee for some time. This is a committee that oversaw $500,000 worth of invoice fraud and a $27 million IT contract blowout, just to name a couple of things. We've never seen any reforms to the way in which this committee operates in secret, so we won't be supporting this item today. Item C, which is the committee meeting dates. We don't have any problem with that. That all makes perfect sense to us. And item E, the amendment of the 2020 approval deadline, given, as the Lord Mayor said, the delay to the start of this term due to the declaration means that needs to be adjusted, which we support. Item D, the good order of video conferencing of council and committee meeting guidelines. We won't be supporting for the very simple fact that these has become very evident now as the restrictions have been winding back, and the way in which the administration councillors are operating here in council now means that we really don't need to have these. It's become very clear that if committee chairs can host their committee meetings in the ordinary committee rooms with a wide range of council staff in a small space like that, if E&C can continue to meet in person in the Balmoral room, there is no reason why council couldn't be accommodated in a building the size of City Hall. Those committee meetings, all of those rooms, like the Balmoral room, the Sandgate room, the Ithaca room, they're all sitting empty at the moment. There's no reason they can't be, committee meetings can't be accommodated in those areas, and there's no reason council can't be accommodated in the main auditorium. And as we see further restrictions winding back, and as the Premier said yesterday, the curve has not just been flattened but has been absolutely crushed. The function of government going forward is very important, and I agree with the Lord Mayor. Council should continue to meet, but we think we should continue to meet in City Hall as the administration continues to do themselves. We don't think these are necessary going forward, and we have never received an appropriate explanation as to why councillors couldn't be accommodated in a building the size of City Hall, so we won't be supporting item D today.
Further speakers? Councillor Cunningham.
Thanks, Chair. I wish to speak on items A and E. Starting with item A, the contracts and tendering report. I welcome item 10 in that report, that is the awarding of the construction tender for Council's Carl Street Urban Common project in Woolloongabba, an area I'm now proud to represent as part of the Cooper Reward. This area within Woolloongabba is dynamic, thriving and a growing hub. The Princess Alexandra Hospital is at the centre of vast medical services and knowledge precinct in the area, and there is a strong retail offering anchored by Buranda Village. There are also connections to the city and UQ via rail and bus stations, and the Brisbane Metro project will see the area serviced by Turn Up and Go services on both Metro Line 1 at Buranda and Metro Line 2 at the PA Hospital. So to further enrich this area, Council is providing more green space for residents by delivering the new Carl Street Urban Common on the corner of Carl and Tottenham Streets. Council has acquired 8 of 9 properties, 4,800 square metres of land in total for this new public green space since 2009. The common includes a sheltered picnic area, a barbecue, a new toilet block and a unique all activities area featuring an array of multi-use structures and climbing walls for fitness, recreation and play. I will soon be consulting via resident voting process to choose an artwork concept for painting the climbing walls. We've also increased the urban canopy in the area with new trees, so there'll be even more green, shady spots to have lunch and enjoy the outdoors here in Woolloongabba. Last year, Council was able to relocate 13 Cowrie pines from the Cross River Rail site in Dutton Park to the Common. In these challenging times, we have seen the value of parks and green space really come to the fore. That's why Council's proud to maintain over 2,000 parks across our city and why we're improving and creating more green space all the time. I look forward to the completion of the park construction at Carl Street in the coming months, and I'm sure the park will prove to be very popular with local residents. I'm proud to be part of a team which is delivering it. Moving on to item E, as the Lord Mayor explained, Mr Chair, it's the amendment of the AP 250 Suburban Enhancement Fund Policy, extending the 2020 approval deadline date by 14 days to the 15th of May to allow Standing Committee to review and approve the expenditure of the Suburban Enhancement Fund projects. For the benefit of new councillors, on the 10th of September last year, councillors voted to adopt AP 250 Suburban Enhancement Fund Policy, which set the date to obtain necessary approvals in accordance with expenditure delegations as the 1st of May in the financial year which the funds were allocated. However, as we've heard, the ECQ took time to declare Brisbane City Council, and the first meeting for Environment, Parks and Sustainability Committee could not be held until after the deadline of the 1st of May. So the outstanding SEFs will pass through EPS Committee next week. The extension means that they can progress through the system and no ward misses out, and I'm happy to support this at the Chamber. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you, Mr Chair. I will hopefully speak on all 5 of the items before us if I have time today. I would like to start, however, with the good order video conferencing guidelines, which is in item D. It is incredibly disappointing that this council has failed to consult with councillors about the fundamental, which is how our city will run. Dating right back to the election and over the last 4 weeks, I repeatedly sought the advice of senior members of the Lord Mayor's office regarding the running of council meetings. And at each time I was deferred, saying no decisions have been made, and ultimately we got a briefing where we were told what was going to happen. It wasn't consultation. We were told that it would be via Zoom. We were told in writing by the CEO that all committee meetings and council meetings would be conducted electronically via Zoom. There are a lot of concerns about this, and I remain very concerned about the process that is unfolding here. It unreasonably isolates councillors. It unreasonably excludes them from the collegiate nature of the work that unfolds. And it is unreasonable that the CEO has made special provision for the LNP councillors secretly without any consultation or consideration for others. So we received a letter from all councillors received a letter from the CEO indicating that these meetings would be conducted via Zoom. As it turns out, the Lord Mayor tweeted a photo of the LNP Establishment and Coordination Committee meeting in the Balmoral room of Brisbane City Council. A very senior member of the Lord Mayor's staff and the person responsible for the running of the council meetings specifically told myself, Councillor Shree and Councillor Cassidy in a councillor's briefing last week that was not possible, that we could not have those arrangements being put in place for committee meetings or the council meeting itself, that none of the rooms in council were suitable for this purpose. Yet what has happened, which is so outrageous, is whilst we were being told one thing in a briefing, the CEO and presumably himself, because he is in charge of the area at council, were making specific secret provisions to allow the LNP councillors to meet in purpose at Brisbane City Council. Now, in my view, that is outrageous. That is just complete council bias. It is completely political, and it demonstrates that the Lord Mayor, whether he directed the CEO, I'm unclear, and perhaps he would like to explain, but in all his correspondence to us, the CEO has made it extremely clear that it was his decision, and he made this discretionary decision. Now, the big problem with all of this is special provisions could clearly be made for a committee of 8 LNP councillors plus their staff plus council officers, including the CEO, who personally attended this meeting in City Hall. So I don't know how many people might have been in the room at any time, but I suspect the minimum would be 10, and I would suggest at times it could have been a lot more. However, a small committee of 6 people could not possibly meet in person. A committee comprising myself and Labor and LNP councillors couldn't possibly meet in person because that would be too hard for council. We just don't make those arrangements according to the CEO, yet he did make them for the LNP. Now, I have been extremely concerned about the process that we are going through here. It is completely unnecessary. The council chamber, as we can all see, because the chairman of council is sitting in there are cameras now all over that chamber. We could have had committee meetings to start with in the council chamber using the existing cameras, socially distancing, and it would not have cost council a single cent. It would have meant that we could meet in City Hall and we could go about running council business in an appropriate way. So that option was not even considered, and it is set up ready to go there. Equally, it would be just as easy to have put, if the room is being set up, and it could be Zoomed or broadcast, as is the council meeting, out to the public to satisfy the public requirement. The quality of what I observed in looking online at other committees this morning was appalling. You could barely read the presentations. Some committees you couldn't even display all councillors on the screen. So certainly one of the committees in which I was in, the chairperson of council could not even see all of the committee members for the vast majority of the meeting. So this is just not a practical format for the way in which these committees need to conduct their business. Now, I don't appreciate being told one thing and then the CEO making special secret provisions for the LNP councillors only. That is absolutely unacceptable. The Lord Mayor tried to imply that council was doing something and the state wasn't meeting and Parliament wasn't meeting and the federal Parliament wasn't meeting. Yes, they are. They sat last week. They sat in person last week. Yes, they had social distancing measures in place, and I understand they're looking at further measures for the conducting Parliament next week as well. But the issue there is they are not just saying to people, we'll make special provisions for the LNP councillors, you can continue meeting in person, but everybody else has to sit in their own room or in their own house or in their office, wherever they are, and you're not allowed to meet in person whilst the LNP get these special arrangements. Now, I note the following councils managed to conduct physical meetings: Logan, Moreton, I think Ipswich did as well. These councils, much smaller than us, they managed to have council meetings without too much drama. Swearing in, I'm not aware of what they're up to now, but as of last week, they met in person. So, in my view, both the CEO and the Lord Mayor have been deceptive in the way we were advised one thing and yet special provisions were made for the LNP E&C committee. Those provisions and that consideration was not extended to other committees, and we were actually told it would not be possible. And yet we see it done specifically for the LNP. That is an outrageous abuse of council powers. There is no reason why we cannot meet in person in City Hall. If we can't do it in the chamber with some special arrangements in place, there are huge auditoriums and it could easily be done in that place. Instead, at a time when the Lord Mayor has again said today that there are significant financial pressures on the city, someone's bought me a new, I don't know how much it is, $2,500 computer, which can only be used for the purpose of this meeting. It can't be used for any other purpose. And how long is it going to be in place? A week or two? And that's for all 26 councillors and the 7 people who we don't know who they are that are technically participating in this meeting. And that's just outrageous. Outrageous. So the Lord Mayor, I think, has been, together with the CEO, and I don't know who said who to what, I can only go on what I've been told in writing by the CEO, this is not appropriate. If it's good enough for the LNP to be meeting in person in specifically set up rooms with social distancing in place, it can be done for all councillors on a tripartisan and independent purpose rather than special arrangements for your own people. That is outrageous. So I don't support what's going on here. This has put a layer of complexity. It's deliberately isolating councillors and it is costing money that does not need to be spent. Schools are going back to school next week. They're managing. In a couple of weeks' time, all students are going to be back at school. I think that our council can do better rather than just wasting money I don't even know why. I mean, if there'd been some consultation about this early on, we probably could have found a practical way by actually discussing this as a group instead of being dictated to at the last minute and then find out that special arrangements had been put in place for the LNP. That's just not acceptable in my view. Just with respect to the council meetings, I note that I won't say it's a part-time council, but the Lord Mayor wants to try and blame the Electoral Commission. Well, they're maybe a week later than they were last year in the same cycle, so it wasn't that far behind what they were doing. Yes, they definitely stuffed up in terms of some of the issues around the running of the election, but that certainly doesn't explain why the Lord Mayor's taking a little holiday for all of July, for another 5 or 6 weeks in September, October.
Is there a point of order to you, Councillor Murphy?
Yeah, Chair, I was waiting for Councillor Johnston to finish. I just don't want her to run out of time. But earlier in her speech, she named a councillor as a member of the Lord Mayor's staff.
I did.
You did. And he's not a member of the Lord Mayor's staff. He's an independent council officer. I just asked Councillor that we did, and the record will show. You did. So, Chair.
Right, okay, everybody calm down. Yes, I do recall being referred to as a member of the Lord Mayor's staff. He is not. He's a member of the CCLO. But
he's a senior member of the CEO's staff, and that was the point that I made, and that's what I believe I said.
Well, I suppose, Councillor Johnston, you're right. That did occur. I didn't put you at the time. However, as the
he's
rules
a public
say,
figure. His name is in the council minutes on a regular basis. Is there a point of order that I have to address here, or may I continue?
No, there's not. But please
Thank
allow
I'd like to continue.
And you will in time. Councillor Johnston, you make many points of order. You asked for them all to be addressed properly. I'm doing my best to address them all properly.
So is that actually a point of order by Councillor Murphy? Because that just seemed to be interrupting and disagreeing with my speech. I'm not sure what point of order he's referring to.
Well, I feel like you're arguing with me, which I discourage you from doing.
You're the one interrupting me and telling me there's no point of order, but you won't let me speak.
So is a member of the CCLO and not a member of the Lord Mayor's staff. And please, the Meetings Local Law asks that we refrain where we can from naming specific officers in particular. So, Councillor Johnston, please continue.
Yes. And thank you. And yes, I thank you, Councillor Murphy, for your non-point of order. I really appreciate that. He's a public member of the council. He regularly is in the minute.
Time has expired.
Good job wasting my time. Well done to you.
Councillor Johnston, just to address the assertion or the implication made, when I am speaking, your time, no councillor's time is consumed. The clock stops, all right? So when I speak, that does not enter into any councillor's speaking time, all right? Further speakers, Councillor Marks.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to speak very briefly on item A with the contract regarding the Forest Lake Rehabilitation. I thank the Lord Mayor. He's given a reasonably good overview of what's actually happening in that space. As he mentioned, work is continuing, and I'm actually meeting with Councillor Strunk tomorrow morning, which he will hopefully take me out to have a look at the lake so we can see for ourselves what's going on in that space. He's taken me up on my offer of some water audits, as has Councillor Adaman and Councillor Toomey. So I look forward to meeting with the rest of you if and when you wish to take me up on that offer. The issue we have obviously with Forest Lake, it's such a niche market and there's very few contractors available to do a lot of the work there. As it shows here with this one about the aquatic plant supply, there was only one tender received. So that's because there's only one person who is able to do that. So that's the work that we'll be continuing, and which is basically planting the new plants that the Lord Mayor mentioned in his conversation about this contract. So I just want to say thank you, Lord Mayor, for continuing on with this election commitment that was made, and I look forward to seeing Councillor Strunk there tomorrow morning, and we can I can give him in more detail what's happening in that space. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Shree.
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly on items A and item C, I believe. On the point of the project regarding the Victoria Street Montague Road intersection, obviously I'm very pleased to see that progressing, and I want to remind the Mayor that there will probably be a need to allocate more money in this year's budget. He spoke about having allocated money, but let's not forget that I think the project needs to be funded over 2 years, so hopefully that's on the radar. Also just wanted to make sure the Chair of Infrastructure and the Chair of Active Transport are aware of the concerns that the footpath widths identified in the concept design for that project might not be wide enough. This is a high traffic, very busy pedestrian area, but I understand the footpath widths are only proposed to be 1.2 metres, and we've asked the project team to look at that more closely, but I do want to make sure it's on the drawn to the Chair's attention specifically, because I think that might be a point of contention down the line. So that's the footpath width for the intersection design of Victoria Street and Montague Road along the Montague Road frontage in front of the Aldi in particular. Just turning really briefly to the Carl Street Park, it's great to hear Councillor Cunningham is excited about that project. I'm obviously really passionate about this one, and I'm really emotionally invested because we put close to $500,000 out of my Suburban Enhancement Fund into this project over 2 years. So I'm a little bit sad to be losing the park from my electorate and not getting to see that project through to completion. But I look forward to chatting to Councillor Cunningham further about some of the details of the project and why certain decisions were made. But anyone else who's interested, one unfinished element of the project was the proposal for a community stage or an event space in the middle of the park that could be used for outdoor concerts, movie nights and performances and meetings, and that wasn't included in the initial concept design due to budget limitations, but there was always an expectation or a desire that we'd put money into the stage in future years out of the Suburban Enhancement Fund. And also, just for the Council's knowledge, the general consensus coming out of the multiple rounds of community consultation we ran was that the space should be referred to as the Buranda Common, and that should be the new name for the park. It's been referred to as the Carl Street Park over the past few years as it's evolved, but we had a lot of consultation via a community festival and an online survey, etc. And the strong support from local residents was that the name of the space should be Buranda Common, which makes a lot of sense given that Buranda is the Aboriginal name for that area, and it's a fairly well identified locale, and I think clearly describes the whole purpose of the urban common in that location. So be interested to swap notes with Councillor Cunningham on the ideas for the mural art project going forward. Just turning to the council meeting dates, I also have concerns about the long recess periods. It does seem like some very, very long holiday breaks, and I would question whether we can't come back a bit sooner or we can't have slightly shorter holiday periods. So not super supportive of that, and also, of course, remain concerned about whether the 2 p.m. start time is ideal, whether we could start earlier. We could still finish as late as we currently finish, but there's always more to talk about. I always find myself wanting to speak about more issues during general business, but usually we have to cut that short because it's getting quite late. So an earlier start time for the general council meetings in particular would allow a bit more room at the end of the meeting for general business, and I think that would be healthy for democracy. Just finally, sort of relating to item C, but more to item D, wanting to get the Mayor to clarify, if possible, whether when we return from the shutdown and start having face-to-face meetings again, will the live streaming of council committee meetings continue? This is very important to me. I think it's very important for transparency and democratic accountability that those meetings are live streamed in the same way that the meetings of full council are live streamed. And I'd appreciate if the Lord Mayor would clarify that the council committee meetings will continue to be live streamed after the shutdown's over. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I just want to speak on contracts and tendering. We have 3 contracts today that deal with various components of the Brisbane Metro. This administration is continuing to progress these very significant contracts which are required for us to deliver this game-changing project for Brisbane. We had a few questions about various parts of these contracts, and I hope I'll cover off on them as we go through. So firstly, to contract 2, which is the Building Information Modelling Advisory Services. So BIM is a standard for state government projects with a value of $50 million or more. And it's actually been required since the 1st of July 2019 to use BIM from the early planning phase. In addition, the Queensland Government has said all major government infrastructure projects will transition to implement BIM by 2023. So with this contract, we received 7 tenders, and following a competitive process, 7 were shortlisted down to 3. They just all displayed a capability to do the work, and the price competitiveness of 1 of the 3 led to one tenderer having the highest value for money. So the successful tenderer, which is DBM Vercon Services Australia, achieved the highest value for money score of 5.54 based and independent council officers, and recommended the tender to be awarded. So the benefit of BIM is to collate into one model planning, procurement, coordination, stakeholder engagement, progress reporting, and cost analysis. So in terms of the successful tenderer, DBM Vercon demonstrated a substantial experience in business building information modelling, including on projects such as the state government's Cross River Rail, Queen's Wharf project, as well as Western Australia's Perth Stadium. In addition, the successful tenderer demonstrated the experience of their BIM advisory services for other organisations like the Port of Brisbane, the West Australian Government, Star Entertainment Group, and the Queensland University of Technology. As construction of Brisbane Metro will include modifying or adding to existing TMR assets like the busway, all the inner city and suburban works will be federated through BIM to allow for that information to be transferred as a single point in a building information model to transport and main roads. So for those who are familiar with the term digital twin, that is what we are doing via this contract. We are creating a digital twin of the metro and of the assets that the metro plugs into, so that when we want to do modelling around traffic flows or impacts of intersection upgrades or other bits of infrastructure that we plug in, we don't have to go out and do all the technical work on the ground. Again, we've got a very detailed digital model that we can use to again and again and again. And the idea is eventually we will have these digital twins operating across all the infrastructure, local, state and federal in Queensland, so that the programming of work is much easier to do, and we don't have to go and generate these bespoke models and reports each and every time we go back and modify something. On to contract 3, this is Intelligent Transport Systems Technical Advisory Services. So one of the key elements of Brisbane Metro is the Platform Management Information System, which facilitates how passengers interact with Metro vehicles as well as buses on the busway by identifying Metro vehicles and buses on the route to and scheduled to stop at a Metro station on the busway, as well as capturing and providing data of Metro vehicle and bus locations, assigning services to specific locations on Metro station platforms, informing passengers where services will stop on metro station platforms while allowing passengers time to walk to their designated location, advising vehicle operators of platform stop location via in-vehicle device, screen and route signage. So to ensure that Council delivers the appropriate specifications for the platform management information system to TransLink, this technical expert will assist Council with specialised advice on requirements of the system. Some advise that there was a strong competitive response to this tender, with 5 tenders received following an assessment by independent council officers. All 3 shortlisted parties displayed a capability to undertake the work. In then assessing the price competitiveness, the successful tenderer led due to higher value for money, and council officers recommended the tender to be awarded due to attaining the highest VFM of 14.2, which is JYW Consulting Proprietary Limited. Council officers noted in their recommendation the substantial IT technical advisory experience, as well as the previous work, including an integrated management control system for Transurban, the initial ITS systems assurance for Airport Link Tunnel and the Northern Busway, the development of TransLink's technology roadmap, as well as previous experience in the delivery of Legacy Way and Go Between Bridge. So this is a very experienced operator in this space, but I do want to stress that the success of the platform management system is heavily dependent on engagement and collaboration with TransLink. There is absolutely no way we will be able to successfully implement this system without TransLink's full support, cooperation, and indeed funding if we are going to roll this out to services other than Metro as well, because certainly there are advantages if we are to roll this service out to buses in addition. Finally, Contract 4, the delivery phase services for Brisbane Metro. Advise that this tender has 2 categories, with the first category 1 to come into effect this year, and in fact this has already started. So in the interest of openness and transparency, the second category, which I'm advised provided strategic level advice to ensure consistency across Council's future major projects like the Green Bridges, will be awarded as part of a future procurement submission that will come to Council. Now, 16 tenders were received for category 1 of the tender, so a very strong competitive market there. Following an assessment by the council officers, there was a shortlisting with a recommended tenderer based on attaining the highest value for money of 18.19, which was Turner and Townsend Proprietary Limited. The officers noted in their recommendation that the successful tender has demonstrated a track record in program management, including extensive experience on projects like Western Sydney Airport, Inland Rail, the Sydney Metro Northwest, and in March 2020, they were appointed to that project, which has now become Australia's biggest public transport project, an $18 billion there. So these people are certainly very experienced. Finally, Councillor Cassidy asked a question about the green bridges. He wanted to know whether we were losing one of the green bridges, and I can confirm that no, we have in fact not lost one of the green bridges. Victoria Bridge will become a green bridge as part of Brisbane Metro and will be in addition to the 5 green bridges that the Lord Mayor has committed to publicly. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry about that. Just quickly, I'm going to turn quickly to items C and D. Obviously, the Lord Mayor touched upon this a little bit earlier, but the 2020 local government elections, which have obviously the determination around those elections was obviously received much later than normal, and that's had a knock-on effect to the Council and Committee 2020 calendar. The results were released or finalised at least a week later than what we expected. So in 2020, all positions for the Brisbane City Council elections were not finalised by the ECQ until the 17th of April, compared with the 2016 election, which was called by the 4th of April. So roughly 2 weeks difference there. This has obviously pushed back Council's ability to hold council meetings by 2 weeks. And it's worth noting that in 2016, Council held the first meeting swearing in of councillors on the 12th of April. This year, the council conducted the first meeting as soon as possible on the 22nd of April, merely 5 days post the finalisation of the ECQ results. In the years 2010...
The election was a whole week earlier too, you forgot to say that.
Hang on, no, please don't interject and allow councillors to complete what they're saying. Councillor Allen. Councillor Allen? We lost him. Oh, we've lost his noise. Is that just us?
Yeah, I can't hear him speaking either.
Councillor Allen, can you hear me? Councillor Allen. Well, he's speaking.
Imagine if we'd all been in the same room. Wouldn't be a problem, would there?
Yeah, can someone...
Can I just suggest that
how are you going to manage this one, councillor?
I'd just like to suggest that this shows the value of enabling the chat function in the message thread, because when he can't see us and we can't hear
Thank you, Councillor Shree. No, I appreciate what you're saying. It's just that right now it doesn't help us.
Can everybody hear me now?
We can hear you now.
I'm not sure why that's cutting. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
I've got the mute button off. Just bear with me. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I don't know what's happened there. Sorry. Look, did you miss the totality of what I was saying?
We missed the last 5 minutes.
portion. We missed a large portion, and we have reset your clock. I appreciate the council's patience in these instances to ensure that that all councillors have their contributions heard and recorded. So, Councillor Allen, please begin where you feel is appropriate, but we're going to allow your speech in its entirety if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So just quickly, I'm not sure where I dropped out, but certainly the meeting schedule this year has been impacted by the delayed release of those results. As I noted, in non-election years, we typically have 29 ordinary council meetings. In 2012 and 2016, which were election years, we had 23 ordinary council meetings. This year, due to the delayed release of the results, we've been only able to fit in 22 ordinary council meetings. On that basis, we've decided to split them across the various sessions. So there's 8 for the autumn session, 7 for the winter session, and 7 for the spring session. Now, in the context of the recesses in particular, in order for council to have recesses, to obviously give councillors a break, we also need to be conscious of the ability of the Establishment and Coordination Committee to manage the functioning of council during those recesses. And the City of Brisbane Act requires that those recesses are a minimum of 20 business days. So that's the key driver behind the length of those particular recesses, and that is available via the City of Brisbane Act. You can look it up, recess power of the Establishment and Coordination Committee, and it relates back to a resolution in 2012. So I'll leave item C there. Just moving on quickly to item D, which is the good order of the video conferencing guidelines. Now, look, I understand that there are people who've got different views on this, but the reality is that there have been a number of temporary changes made to provisions of both the Local Government Regulation 2012 and the City of Brisbane Regulation 2012 to allow council to conduct meetings via phone or via teleconference. And this supports not only the ability of the council to meet as we are today, but also for the public to be able to view these meetings through the various platforms that are available. So the impetus behind this is to provide a mechanism for us to meet in a way that's standardised, where we can all have our say. Now, I appreciate that some people may not find the platform to their liking, but be that as it may, we have a situation that's being guided by health authorities. We're trying to be as supportive of their objectives as we can be, and accordingly we've chosen to use the Zoom platform in the medium term. Clearly, we are hopeful that a day will come soon where we can all get back to the normal manner of running committee and council meetings. But in the meantime, I think we do need to persevere, and that certainly this platform provides us with the ability not only to social distance, but more importantly, conduct the council of business and get the decisions that we make in a way that not only achieves the objectives of council, but also provides for the public to be able to review and witness the workings of council. So I do believe that ultimately we will get back to what obviously Councillor Johnston and Cassidy are more comfortable with, but I would say to them, take the opportunity to adapt, learn some new skills. I also believe that while the provision of laptops is obviously something that a new laptop is something new, rest assured they will go back into a pool in due course, and I can assure you that the costs of setting up microphones, video conferencing and everything else within a large room in City Hall would be well in excess of the cost of what we've incurred to set up this Zoom platform, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Further speakers? Anybody? The Lord Mayor, do you wish to respond?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I go on in response to some of the issues that were raised, just briefly, I wanted to update Councillor Johnston on the issue that she raised in question time, if you don't mind. Is this an appropriate way to do this? I seek your guidance, Chair.
Yeah, no, it'd probably be better in your first report, but I think that it's appropriate that during your report today, your presentation today, if you're able to address that, that would be acceptable.
Okay, I can confirm that in relation to the footpath listing, Councillor Johnson mentioned $488,000 for the project. That was listed in the budget. As of the end of March, so just a short time ago, $486,000 had been spent on that project. So we budgeted $488,000 and we've spent $486,000. So there's a $2,000 difference there, but we have spent what we budgeted to spend. Having said that, we've also created a new listing for further works to be done.
Half the project you promised to do.
That will be considered.
The answer to be heard. Lord Mayor.
That will be considered going forward. So as I suggested before, we cannot take Councillor Johnston at her word on these things because she made a claim. She may have put out
only half the project's
theory,
been done.
Thank you.
How is it you've massively overspent? Massively overspent then. Why is only half the project done?
Lord Mayor, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so once again, we have discovered that Councillor Johnston makes unfair and inaccurate claims, and also misuses the council meeting rules to debate during points of order when she is not entitled to do so.
Why does it cost double? Double. Why is only half of it?
Lord Mayor, please continue.
Thank you. Just in relation to one of the other issues that was raised, the River Hub, there was a question asked, I think, by Councillor Cassidy about whether it was local fabrication for that marine infrastructure. And I can confirm that that is the case. And in fact, under our new procurement policy, which I brought in last year, where we have a new target for local procurement and support for local businesses, these sort of projects are being fabricated locally. And that will also apply, I'm pleased to announce, to ferry terminals that we build going forward as well. We want to make sure that as much as possible is being done locally, and I'm proud to have introduced that initiative to Brisbane City Council, and we'll continue to do what we can to support local businesses by ensuring that as much local work is incorporated into our contracts as possible, and we'll continue to have that 80% target of our procurement contracts to be with local small business. And there's an incredible flow-on effect from that. We do around $1 billion worth of procurement each year, and so if we target that 80% of contracts being with local providers, local companies, then there's potentially a benefit of up to $800 million into the local economy that we can help generate through our normal procurement spend and the projects that we normally do. So 800 million or up to 800 million in a year is a significant benefit to local business and will support significant local jobs. And another example is the double-decker city cats, which are under construction here in Brisbane. The first one has been incredibly popular and successful and is working its way up and down the river. And we've got the second one under construction and looking forward to seeing that completed, once again, by a local company employing local workers to build that vessel. And that's the sort of thing we want to see more of going forward. I thank Councillor Murphy and Councillor Allen, as well as Councillor Marks, for their contributions. And I think I will leave my comments at that.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will now put the items as they were requested earlier. So I'll now put item A. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Please hold your hands there.
Aye.
Please lower your hands. And those against item A, please raise your hand and say no.
No.
Please hold them there. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any abstentions? Please hold your hands there. There are some. Thank you. Item A is carried. Now items, excuse me, item B and D. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you. Please hold your hands there. Please lower them. And those against, please raise your hand and say no.
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 Thank you. Just please hold them there so that we can record you. Yep. Please lower your hands.
Division.
Division.
The division is called by Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Johnston. Please ring the bells. Please stop the bells. All right. All those in favour, please say aye and hold your hand so that we may see it and count it.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Please lower your hands. The noes, please raise your hand, say no and hold it in the screen so that we may see it and count it.
No.
Aye.
Thank you. Clerks, please read the result.
The ayes have it, the voting being 20 in favour and 6 against.
The ayes have it. And now on items C and E, All those in favour, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Please lower them. And all those against, please raise your hand and say no.
No.
All right. The ayes have it. Thank you. So the ayes have it, and that concludes the Establishment and Coordination Committee report.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order, Councillor Johnston.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you tell us who the 7 participants in the meeting are that cannot be seen?
They are the clerks. They are the people who ensure that this meeting operates properly. So they're the people that you would typically expect to be in here.
Well,
so
Mr. Chairman, that's why I asked, because there's normally 2 clerks and 1 attendant to monitor the streaming of the council
I know you can still see me. I can see myself.
So, Mr. Chairman, there are 6 or 7 people who are participating in this meeting, and I don't believe that there must be 6 or 7 clerks. So, could you please tell us who else is participating in the council meeting?
I think the term participating is sort of a broad one that the Zoom program uses, but they are people here to support the operation of this meeting to ensure that it goes ahead. I will discuss with. I'll pursue for you a list of those people.
If it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, as it is with the clerks and so on, their names should be published in the minutes if they are participating in this meeting in some way.
Thank you. I appreciate your note, and but also those individuals, much as we would typically have within the meeting, there are people here on the Zoom meeting who are within the meeting to make sure that it operates correctly, and that the support is provided both from an IT but also an administrative perspective. Okay, all right. Thank you, councillors. I'll now move to the consideration of notified motions. It is item 5. Councillor Sri, would you like to move the motion, please?
Thanks, Chair.
There you are.
Chair, sorry. I move that Brisbane City Council confirms its support for the preservation of historic buildings around Brisbane. Brisbane City Council notes with concern that the Impact Accessible Development Application A0054172557 for 93 Logan Road, Wollongabba, proposes to demolish multiple elements of the State Heritage listed Broadway Hotel. Brisbane City Council resolves to reject the application to demolish most of the Broadway Hotel development application A0054172557, as it does not comply with the relevant acceptable outcomes or performance outcomes defined in Brisbane City Plan 2014.
Seconded.
All right, I have a motion moved by Councillor Sri, seconded by Councillor Johnston. Now, it is as presented in the notice of motion in your papers provided to you earlier today. I received legal advice that item 3 is invalid, however items 1 and 2 are valid. Please allow me to provide the council further information. The development application is an impact accessible development application subject to the DAR or Development Assessment Rules prepared under Section 68 of the Planning Act 2016. Currently, the proposed development application is within Part 3, Information Request, of the development assessment process. The motion moves that Council rejects the development application. The intent of the motion is to refuse the development application which falls within Part 5 decision of the DAR. Relevantly, Section 21(1) states that the assessment manager cannot decide the application until Parts 1, 2, 3 and 4 as relevant to the application have ended. As the development application is impact accessible, Part 3 and 4 of the DAR are relevant and not yet completed. Accordingly, Council cannot make a decision on item 3. However, I believe that it's the interests of the Council to consider items 1 and 2, and if there would be an individual on the Council who would remove item 3 for seriatim, we can continue to have this debate at this time. Is there anyone who would be prepared to propose that? Councillor Sri?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll be happy to move that as an amendment to my motion.
Seconded.
Thank you. So we will now take item 1 and 2 for debate and voting, and then item 3 we will address it later. Thank you. Councillor Sri.
Point of order, Chair. Sorry, yes. So can I just clarify that that item 3 will essentially lie on the table for debate at a later date?
No, it will be deemed invalid and will not form part of the discussion. But however, 1 and 2 are valid and will form today's discussion.
So does that mean that, sorry to just clarify my understanding of the ruling, that in a few months it will be fine to bring a follow-up notified motion once it's in the decision stage?
I believe so, but also in light of the notes that I provided to you earlier, we can only do that in Area 5 or Part 5 decision. So sections 1, 2, 3, and 4 have to be concluded, and according to the information provided to me, we're in Part 3. So when we get to Part 5, we can address it at that point, but we're forbidden to do so at this point.
Okay, I think I understand you, but just so I've got it 100% clear, and so everyone watching is 100% clear, once we enter the stage 5, the decision stage, it will be this council has the power to pass a motion to the effect of section 3 of this motion.
Yeah, but I'm not going to call it back. You'll have to propose it at that time.
Sure, understood. That's fine. Thank you. So, with your permission, Chair, I might speak to section 1 and 2 of this motion.
Please proceed.
So, the development application for 93.
Point of order, Councillor Landers.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move that council now adjourn for afternoon tea for 15 minutes, which commences only when all councillors have vacated the chamber.
Started moving a motion, shouldn't I? Finish moving the motion before that?
So, excuse me. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Landers, could I please ask for that motion to be presented at the conclusion of Councillor Shree's presentation? Thank you. Councillor Shree.
Thanks, Chair. So the development application for 93 Logan Road, Wollongabba is lodged with regards to the Broadway Hotel. I won't spend too much time explaining the location to councillors. Most councillors should be aware of it and should understand that it's the subject of a great deal of community concern. The hotel was functioning as a hotel up until around 2010 when it was damaged by a fire, and since then has been left to rot and has gradually fallen into further disrepair with subsequent fires and other forms of vandalism. The council has previously received a development application for a 27-storey high-rise on this site, and the council had strong concerns about that development application, in part because of its impacts on heritage. And that previous development application, which council had concerns about, was proposing to demolish similar parts of the hotel to this particular development application. So this development application is proposing to demolish all of the 1- and 2-storey wings of the hotel site, as well as the World War II air raid shelter at the back of the site. All of these elements of the hotel are specifically listed on the Queensland State Heritage Register and are identified as being of important state significance. So it's obviously very concerning to myself and a lot of local residents that this development application has even been lodged, because it suggests that the owner wouldn't bother even lodging the development application if they didn't perceive that they had some chance of success. So what I'm hearing from the community is that the vast majority of residents do not support this demolition application. They do not support this historic building being partially or largely demolished, and believe that this would fundamentally undermine the heritage values of the site. The heritage values are, as I mentioned, listed clearly in the State Heritage Register, and I won't enunciate them one by one, except to note that some of the elements which are proposed to be demolished, such as the World War II air raid shelter in particular, have very strong local significance above and beyond their state heritage significance. They were built by locals. There's a story in the local community that the air raid shelter was dug by students of Buranda Primary School down the road. So obviously, even if demolition of parts of the building might not impact its state heritage values, there's a strong impact on the local heritage values, and this building falls on both the local heritage register and the state heritage register. The broader concern here is that if we allow this demolition application, if this building is allowed to be demolished, the very strong risk is that this sends a message to the owners of other heritage buildings around the city that they can adopt a similar strategy of essentially demolition by neglect. Now, I'm sure other councillors have seen this in their own wards, where an owner has an old building on the site that's protected, the building becomes inconvenient in some way, and it would be easier for the owner if the building wasn't there, because then they could build a new high-rise or a block of units on it, for example. The owner will then leave the site to slowly fall into disrepair, and then eventually apply to council or to the state government, depending on the level of assessment, and say, sorry, this building can't be saved, it's too far gone, you have to let me demolish it. Now, if we allow those sorts of development applications to be approved, we're sending a signal to the entire property industry that this is an acceptable strategy to pursue. We are saying to everyone across the city, if you have an old building and council won't let you demolish it, you just have to wait till the building's in really bad repair. You just have to neglect it, let the rain get in, don't repair vandalism, and eventually it'll be so bad that council will have no choice but to approve the demolition. That's what we're dealing with here. So it's not just about this one site, it's about a broader pattern across the city, and about the fact that residents right across Brisbane are feeling frustrated that heritage buildings that are of significance to the community are not being protected satisfactorily from development. So I'm very clear and firm in my view that I don't think this demolition should be allowed. I don't think we should be even negotiating partial demolition. It shouldn't be a situation of, we'll require the developer to keep this part of the building and knock down that part of the building. We need to take a very hard line here, because if the owner is allowed to demolish even part of the building on the basis that the building has fallen into disrepair, the signal that will send to the broader community, and the signal that will send to the property developers in particular, will be really concerning and will set a dangerous precedent for the city as a whole in terms of heritage protection. So my view remains that council should buy back this site. We should be bringing it back into public ownership, restoring it as a community facility, and using amalgamating this site with the council-owned land around it. Council already owns a road reserve area at the corner of Balaclava Street and Logan Road to create a broader public park, which the hotel could sit in, and the backside of the hotel could then be expanded as a community facility. There's a lot of options for this site. It's big enough for council to use in a variety of ways, but the practical reality of the moment is that it won't be financially viable for private developers to restore the hotel in its entirety when the market's in such a difficult situation. So if we simply leave it in private ownership, the risk is that it will continue to deteriorate. We'll see further development applications in the future, but there won't actually be any clear pathway to restore and rehabilitate the hotel. So I'm arguing very clearly that we need more community facilities in this area. We need more publicly owned facilities to cater for Woolloongabba's rapidly growing population. And so it would seem like this is a really good example of a building that can be restored as a community facility in a way that protects and respects its heritage values, rather than simply allowing private owners to do whatever they want with the site. I'll save further comments for wrapping up, but just to emphasise that the reason I've broken the motion into two parts is because I think it's important to note that even if we aren't empowered today to reject the development application, we should at least note our concerns and note that the development application does indeed propose to demolish most of the hotel, and that's not something that this council is generally supportive of. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. Councillor Landers, that point of order from earlier.
Thank you, Chair. I move that council now adjourn for afternoon tea for 15 minutes, which commences only when all councillors have vacated the chamber.
Not in the chamber. Oh, sorry.
A second, please.
Seconded.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Landers, seconded by Councillor Hutton, that this council now adjourn for a period of 15 minutes for the purpose of afternoon tea, commencing when all councillors have left the meeting. All those in favour say aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
And those against? No, and raise your hands.
No.
The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon. Councillors, welcome to the afternoon. Are there further speakers on the resolution before us? Sorry, Councillor Adams, did you put your hand up?
I saw Councillor Johnson's hand up, so.
Excuse me, sorry, Councillor Johnson, I definitely saw your hand. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I saw Councillor Cook's hand, but I'm happy just to speak very briefly on this. I didn't see Councillor Adams at all, but I'm happy just to speak very briefly. When Councillor Shree approached me to second the motion, I was very happy to. Obviously, this building is not far out of my ward. It's had a very checkered history, unfortunately, and it's very disappointing that the historic nature of the hotel is at risk from development. As the Chamber knows and as Brisbane residents know, I have moved motion after motion in the Council Chamber to try and protect all pre-46 homes and pre-1911 homes. I don't think our mapping and protection of character buildings or historic buildings, as this motion is worded, is enough. You know, I don't want to you know, lose any more historic homes or buildings like the Broadway Hotel. So certainly, you know, we lost a bomb shelter in Annerley just off Cracknell Road a few years ago because this council didn't recognise its significance, and there are only a few left in Brisbane. So certainly I would support items 1 or 2, 1 and 2 as put forward by Councillor Shree and myself. Certainly I'd support item 3. So if the matter does come back to full council, you know, and there is too much character being lost, you know, then I would certainly support council refusing the application, given the concerns outlined by the local councillor, Councillor Shree.
Further speakers? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I rise to speak in support of the notice motion on behalf of the Labor opposition and as Shadow Planning Chair. Mr Chair, back in September 2018, the Labor opposition moved an urgency motion in this place to protect this site through a temporary local planning instrument to create a special precinct to ensure any future development of the site was like for like with the heritage listed Broadway Hotel. That motion at the time was supported by the 5 Labor councillors, Councillor Shree and Councillor Johnston. Mr Chair, it was not supported by any of the LNP councillors in this place, including the Lord Mayor. They did not support the protection of this site, nor did they believe the Broadway Hotel should be developed like for like. Unlike the LNP, Mr Chair, Labor has consistently confirmed its support for the preservation of historic buildings around Brisbane. Our support is not limited to the Broadway Hotel. It extends to a range of historic buildings across the city, which is why we are happy to support paragraph 1 in this notice of motion before us today. Labor unequivocally confirms its support for the preservation of historic buildings across Brisbane. In relation to paragraph 2 of the motion, Mr Chair, we of course have concerns that the development application proposes to demolish multiple elements of the state heritage listed Broadway Hotel, including the air raid shelter and other elements that Councillor Shree has already discussed. It is unclear if the developer plans to develop the site of those demolitions with other buildings. It is also unclear if it is the developer's intention to restore and retain the hotel. Those questions, Mr Chair, remain unanswered, and we would like to know what those plans are. Mr Chair, Labor's position is that we do not support any demolition or development that would compromise the heritage value of the Broadway Hotel. Mr Chair, the question for this chamber today is whether or not the LNP administration and Lord Mayor agrees with that position. Today, we will hear what their priorities are. Mr Chair, we know that almost every time this issue has been discussed, the LNP administration has taken every opportunity to shift the blame to the state government. It is now time for the LNP to stand with us and take the heritage of the city seriously. We support this motion today and want council and all councillors to commit to ensuring the preservation and rehabilitation of the Broadway Hotel.
Further speakers? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish to speak on the amended motion before us and support it in full. First of all, I refer to point number 1, that Brisbane City Council confirms its support for the preservation of historic buildings around Brisbane, and this is absolutely true. We support this, and I'll outline exactly why we support this, because we back it up with actions as well. For many years now, Council has been researching the significance of Brisbane properties and putting them onto our heritage register. Right now, there are over 2,000 places on our register, and with more being added all the time. From old churches, war bunkers, family homes, statues, monuments, our register is a database designed to keep heritage front and centre when it comes to promoting our history. In addition to this, we are continually bringing forward city plan amendment packages which recognise properties deserving that protection as well. Now, whether it be tin and timber Queenslanders or the unique Art Deco apartment complexes peppered across Brisbane, it is important to remember the important contribution they make to the streetscape and the role they play in keeping Brisbane's identity. That's why we have introduced a set of guidelines for homeowners wanting to renovate their character properties with a modern touch on alterations and extensions for that design guide, because we support the preservation of historic buildings around Brisbane. We have been successful in some part lobbying the state government to grant powers to allow us to issue a repair notice to locally listed heritage buildings, but the difficulty comes here when it is a state-listed building. We have moved protection heritage properties using TLPIs like we've done in Cooperoo, in Milton, in Nudgee and Kangaroo Point, and we've moved swiftly to do this and thank the state for the cooperation when they do come ahead and approve with them. So we are seeking and happy to seek on behalf of the administration and confirm its support for the preservation of historic buildings around Brisbane, including the Broadway Hotel. We have always supported heritage and we always will. On the second part of the motion, Brisbane City Council notes with concern that the impact assessable development application for 93 Logan Road, Woolloongabba, proposes to demolish multiple elements of the state heritage listed Broadway Hotel, and we are also noting with concern the development application to partially demolish the Broadway Hotel. We hope that the state government will undertake a very thorough assessment of this application to ensure that all heritage features of the building are retained. Now, I hear from Councillor Cook that we just shove it up to the state government and blame the state government. This is not a blame game. This is what the legislation requires, and you need to be very aware when a development application is lodged on a state heritage listed building, Council has to refer that application to SARA, the State Assessment Referral Agency, as it's known. It is then the state government that either approves the application or refuses it. We have made this very, very clear with the applicant, and we have also asked the state government on many occasions around this that we do not support the demolishment as well. It's extremely important that they take a full and thorough assessment of the application before them and give us their guidance. What could be prevented, however, is something that Councillor Shree brought up, and that is the disrepair that we're seeing in this building. This could have been easily prevented if the state government had issued an essential repair and maintenance notice to the property owner. We have been calling on them to do this since October 2018. I've lost count of the TLPIs we've brought in since 2018 to make sure that we save heritage in Brisbane. But despite issuing notices on other properties around the state, they have not done this on the Broadway Hotel. It just comes down to political will, which is currently apparently totally lacking when it comes to the local representative, Jackie Trad, or maybe Minister Enoch in the department as well. They've issued stop work orders, exemption certificates, and a lot of media releasing saying it's not their problem, but they refuse to issue one basic notice which could have prevented this whole saga. Do the hotel up, repair it and maintain it, and there would be no application for demolishing because it would be in a good state of repair. If we had the powers to issue these notices, we absolutely would. We have to opt for the limited powers that we have underneath the Building Act. We do this solely on the understanding that the state does not intend to use the appropriate powers that are actually available to them at this time. As such, Council's position remains that the only way, and to appropriately preserve the heritage of the Broadway Hotel is to use the powers available to the state under the Heritage Act, and we implore them to do that. This would prevent any development application that we are currently talking about today. As mentioned, as I rose to speak on this, we are happy to support this motion before Chambers today. And I note the enthusiasm that Councillor Johnson has to get involved in city planning issues, even if she doesn't want to be on my committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further speakers? Further speakers? I'll now call Councillor Shree.
Thanks, Chair, and I'd like to thank the councillors in this chamber for their support of the motion. I'm very grateful to hear that the independent councillor, the Labor councillors and the LNP councillors all support the motion in its current form. I won't labour the point, I'm mindful of time, but I do just want to emphasise how important this building is to the community, not just in terms of the built form itself, but in the stories that attach to this place and in its symbolic value as a heritage building that's deserving of protection more generally. What happens to the Broadway Hotel in terms of its future reflects on this council administration and on the state government. And I guess one of my concerns in response to Councillor Adams' comments is that it might not be quite correct to say that the development application is referred to the state government and then the state government decides whether to approve it. I don't want to put words in Councillor Adams' mouth, but my understanding of the process is that the State Assessment Referral Agency, SARA, is a referral agency. So we refer the development application to them in regards to the elements of the development application that impact upon or potentially impact upon state heritage. Then the state government provides that advice back to council. So it's the case that even if ultimately council is still called upon to make a decision about this development application. So it gets referred to the state government looks at the heritage impacts, provides advice, but it still comes back to council for a final decision. Now, it is actually possible to have a scenario where the state government says, look, the changes to this building don't undermine its state heritage significance, and for the state government to reach that conclusion, but for council to still decide that the partial demolition of the building would undermine its local heritage significance or would have other negative impacts on the community. So hypothetically, for example, the state government might say, look, these demolition changes aren't significant enough to impact the state heritage listing. I would obviously disagree with that view, but if the state government came to that view, it would still be open to council to conclude that the general public interest is not served by approving this impact accessible development application. And that's the view I would be advocating. So I'm very cautious of opening up a rhetorical framework where this administration can simply say, oh, it's up to the state government, and if the state government approves it, we will approve it too. That definitely should not be the mindset that the Chair of City Planning's taken, and I'm not saying that's what the Chair has said so far, but I just want to be very clear that ultimately council still has to make a decision about this, and I'm very firmly of the view that we should not support demolition, even partial demolition of this hotel, even if the state government says it's all right to do so, because of that broader precedent I mentioned earlier. The real concern here is that the owner of the property will say, look, the buildings are too far gone to be saved. We have to demolish because they're unsafe, they're termite ridden, whatever, we can't retain them. But if we approve that, that sends a signal to every other owner of a heritage building throughout the city. So I want to be 100% clear for anyone who's listening at home. Yes, the state government is a referral agency for this development application, but council still has to make an ultimate determination as well. And so it will be really important that when council does eventually have to make that decision, we make the right decision and refuse this development application. But above and beyond that, we still need to have a long-term plan for this property. It would be really disappointing if council simply said, no, you can't demolish the hotel, and then the building just sits there vacant for another 10 years. It's literally been there for a decade now, and clearly leaving it in private ownership isn't leading to the hotel being restored or rejuvenated. In fact, it is leading to the hotel deteriorating further. So it's good to hear that the council administration has concerns about this demolition and doesn't seem to be supportive of the demolition application. But it is really important that this council administration takes responsibility for ensuring this hotel is restored in a manner that is sympathetic to its heritage values and ideally brought into public ownership so that it can be restored as a community facility, a live music venue, a space that can be enjoyed by the broader public. That's what needs to happen for this site. There's a real shortage of community facilities in the central part of Woolloongabba due to the rapid densification of that neighbourhood. We really need more public parks and green spaces, pocket parks and community centres and venue spaces. And the Broadway Hotel site would be ideally located to serve that dual purpose. So once again, very grateful to all the councillors for saying no, or at least expressing concerns about this development application, but really want to emphasise that the job is not yet done, and it is up to this council administration to take responsibility for ensuring that the hotel is restored as a community facility going forward. So hopefully this will send a strong message to the property industry that we are not going to let these buildings fall into disrepair, and that we as a council are going to take responsibility for ensuring they're maintained and restored going forward. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour of items 1 and 2, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Please hold and thank you. Please lower them. And those saying no.
Yes, councillor.
And those saying no, please say no and raise your hand. The ayes have it.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Shree.
Division.
And a division called by Councillor Cook. Please ring the bells.
You don't need to ring them for very long, surely.
No, but we do have to ring them for a little bit.
Yep. For anyone who's interested, there's a dedicated mute button where you can mute the bell ringing and still hear everything else that's coming through the Zoom meeting.
Very
click
interested.
view options.
Very interested in that.
Thank you, everyone. All right, everyone, all those saying aye, please raise your hand and hold it there so it may be counted.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your patience. Right. Please lower them, and those voting no, please raise your hand and hold it there so it may be counted. Clerks, please read the result.
Mr. Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 27 in favour.
Thank you. We'll now, the ayes have it, the resolution is supported. As item 3 was discussed earlier, it is invalid and will not be considered today. All right, councillors, are there any petitions? Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. I have 2 petitions which we've been attempting to send through to the committee clerks. First one opposing a 6-storey development in Sandgate as part of the Sandgate neighbourhood plan, and the second is requesting direct access into the Sikh temple at 101 Lemke Road, Tagan.
Councillor Maddock.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I did email it through, but for the purposes of the record, I just wanted to make sure. It's an email, it's a petition of residents in Barden in regards to reducing the speed limit on Simpsons and Chiswick roads.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I have a petition from 581 petitioners requesting that Council take every opportunity to acquire numbers 409, 411, 415, 427, 432 and 440 Beckett Road at Brisbane Downs for the purpose of a wildlife corridor across Beckett Road between Cabbage Tree Creek to Dawn Road Reserve.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got 2 petitions that again were sent through, but I'm just unsure if they've been received. One is a petition for Council to provide more bike trails in the East Brisbane and Coorparoo areas, and the other is to stop a development application at 95 Barton Road and 27 Jenolan Avenue in Hawthorn.
Are there any other petitions? I don't see any hands being raised. May I please have a resolution to adopt to accept those, please, Councillor Landers.
Mr Chair, I move that the petitions as presented be received and referred to the committee concerned for consideration and report.
And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Landers, seconded by Councillor Cook, that all petitions as presented be received and referred to the committee concerned for consideration and report. All those in favour say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. And please lower your hands, and no, raise your hand. Thank you. The ayes have it. Councillors, I now draw your attention to general business. Councillors, let me statements required as a result of a council conduct review panel audit. Councillor Audit.
I wish to make a statement in relation to a decision made by the CCRP and provided to me on the 18th of March 2020. Today, I would like to place my personal statement on public record in regard to this matter. Despite false insinuations by members of the opposition, I did not use my cab charge at any time for personal purposes to travel to any hospital. These were errors made by the cab charge reporting system and is substantiated in writing by the relevant cab company. Under the Council Policy AP 193, no guidelines were ever issued to me in relation to the use of the cab charge card for chairman. In the absence of any council guidelines, I applied the principles of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Policy under Section 6(1)D of the PBR Act as a basis for my official duties. I was invited in an official capacity to attend 2 events at Boondall by a sponsor of a major event in my ward of which I am patron, and I would not have otherwise received this invitation. When the first Brisbane City Council policy guidelines relating to cab charge use by a chairman was introduced in late 2019 and it was provided to me, I applied this policy retrospectively, despite being under no obligation to do so, and voluntarily repaid amounts which related to the performance of my role, but then did not meet the tighter guidelines of the newly introduced policy. I respect the legislative structure under which we operate, and in accordance with the City of Brisbane Act, where a decision has been made by the CCRP, in the absence of any right of appeal, I am required to comply with the decision as handed down by the CCRP. As such, I have been required by the CCRP to provide the council chamber with an apology, and I do so herewith.
I'm sorry, I don't care if you kick me out, but Angela, you would not allow me to speak and apologise 5 or 6 years ago, and what you just...
Okay, thanks everybody.
That was just a disgrace, Andrew.
Thank you, councillors. We will now further matters of general business.
Yes.
Councillor Cumming.
Yes. Thank you, Mr Chair. I wish to provide a report on the results of the 2020 Brisbane City Council election. First to the mayoralty. Adrian Stringer was elected as Lord Mayor of Brisbane. On the latest figures on the ECQ website, he received 56.32% of the vote after preferences. This was down 3.19% compared to Graham Quirk's results in 2016. Nevertheless, it was a convincing victory. However, it is still a position where Labor could win in 2024. The Liberal margin in the mayoralty has dropped from 68.3% in 2012 to 59.51% in 2016 to 56.32% in 2020. The trend is all one way. Despite the massive advantages of administration and the massive amount of ratepayer-funded advertising on brochures about the Metro, Brisbane, Victoria Park, etc., social media and numerous other forms of advertising, the LNP Lord Mayoral vote went backwards. I now turn to the wards. There were no changes in any of the wards, which I sadly predicted before the election. However, there were some very interesting results. Enoggera. The closest result for Labor was in Enoggera. Our original candidate, Amanda Ronan Hearn, had run in 2016. In 2012, LNP councillor Andrew Wines had received 65.55% of the vote. In 2016, Amanda slashed this margin. It was 54.78% to Andrew Wines and 45.24% to Amanda, a swing of 10.79%. Now, unfortunately, Amanda had to pull out as the candidate due to ill health, and a Labor's new candidate, Jonty Bush, who with very limited campaigning time or funding, further slashed councillor Wines' margin to 51.83%, a further drop of 2.93%. In terms of votes, councillor Wines won by only 785 votes. Councillor Wines, a word of advice. I suggest you enjoy this term in council as it is likely to be your last. Northgate. The other very close result for the second election in a row was Northgate. Councillor Adam Allen won with 51.85% of the vote, which was a margin of 839 votes. Councillor Allen's margin in 2016 was 778 votes. Now, Councillor Allen and I have been in this chamber for quite a while. I could point out numerous examples of successful local councillors. They get elected by small margins in their first term, then work their ward hard and turn their margin around to about 10% at the second election. Councillor Allen, in your first term, you managed to get an increase of 61 votes. In short, you've gone nowhere. Now, Councillor, I place you in the same category as Councillor Wines and urge you to enjoy your last term in council. Now, there is another issue I need to raise in relation to Noggera and Northgate. That is the issue of compulsory preferential voting, or CPV as it is known. CPV is the system used at Commonwealth and state levels. It means you have to fill in all.
Councillor Cumming. Peter. Councillor Cumming, we're missing it. This has been really good.
Well, point of order, Mr. Chairman. Just as you did for Councillor Adam Allen, you are going to have to let him start from the very beginning. And
No, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Johnson, that was an act of disorder. Please, just because you can interject doesn't mean you should. Councillor Cumming. Can someone who has his phone number text him, please?
He's just
maybe if you yell louder, he'll hear you.
His machine.
God. I've just texted him, but he may not look.
Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to you applying your ruling from earlier again.
It's already been discussed.
Plus, can I just say we can't keep conducting meetings where people can't participate.
You can't just say.
Well.
No, you can't just say.
Well, are we in a meeting or not? Because how are you?
Can someone please contact Councillor Cumming and get him to
meeting?
If he was in here, we could contact him quite easily.
Mr. Chair, I'm trying to call him right now.
Thank you.
He's clearly in the moment.
He's prepared so much. All right, I think what we're going to have to do, we'll come back to, to Councillor Cumming. Are there any further matters of general business? Councillor Johnston.
Yes, and I hope Councillor Cumming looks up and see. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. I hope Councillor Cumming looks up and he can see, because I was thoroughly enjoying that. I too would like to provide a report on the election, just a few brief comments. And I'm very surprised that Councillor Cunningham actually left out Paddington Ward, but perhaps he's talking about that now. Because I suspect Councillor Matic had a near-death experience, and I don't know if he was feeling confident all the way through, but certainly 300 votes seems to be a fairly narrow margin. I would just like to place on the record my thanks to Tennyson Ward residents who have re-elected me with a 23.44% margin, which is quite extraordinary. With the changes in the boundary, I've managed to retain all of the votes from last time, and given the problematic candidate that the Liberals put forward, I was expecting actually to lose quite a few votes, and perhaps normal levels of transmission would be resumed. But I'm very grateful for the ward for sticking with me, and I look forward to working for my residents, including the new area of Oxley that is in Tennyson Ward, over the next 4 years, and we're off to a flying start there. Thank you to Councillor Griffith, whose Parks Legacy projects are still being delivered. I'm very grateful. I just want to place on the record my observations about the election. And it was quite a remarkable result, and I think there are three things that seem to happen during the election campaign. Obviously, coronavirus, the Lord Mayor and the LNP used their incumbency. Councillor Cummings, you're going to get another 10 minutes, so we're looking forward to that.
Councillor Johnston, stick to your notes, please.
Yeah, I've just got my little my stats. But look, coronavirus obviously impacted, and that has a fairly profound effect in the last 2 weeks of the campaign, from my observation. Two, the state Labor government chopped their colleagues here in council off at the knees by getting rid of compulsory preferential voting. I think that whilst the LNP would have retained office, there were seats that both the Greens and Labor would have won. I'm not a fan of compulsory preferential voting. Vote one's fine with me, but it would have been a different result, and seats would have changed hands if the state Labor government hadn't gone to jelly and abandoned their Labor colleagues. And then thirdly, I think there are probably some issues around the fact that the Labor campaign didn't cut through. The LNP campaign itself was a bit lacklustre, apart from all the advertising. But I guess that was a very deliberate strategy to run a small target campaign. But what I would like to just leave residents and all the councillors listening, of the 20 LNP councillors, including the Lord Mayor, 11 wards, in 11 LNP wards, more people voted for someone other than the LNP. And I'll just let everybody know which wards they were. That's on the first preference vote. Obviously, two-party preferred, it's a different result. But in 11 cases, more people voted for someone else other than the elected councillor they actually got. So first one was the Lord Mayor. He got 47.74% of the vote. Councillor Owen, who I think Councillor Owen and Councillor Mackay, so Callum Vale and Walter Taylor, both very safe LNP seats. I think they had 13% swings against them. It was just quite extraordinary. Callum Vale 48.3, Cooperoo Ward 44.87, Enoggera 45.1, Holland Park 48.44, Marchant 49.37, Northgate 46.7, Paddington 45.45, Pullenvale 41.68, and Walter Taylor 46.88. Now there are 11 councillors here who their residents did not want them. They wanted someone else, whether that was a Green, that was Labor, or in some cases there were some fantastic independents running in different seats who did secure a few percentage points of the vote. So when the LNP starts crowing over the course of the next 4 years about how well they did in the election campaign, they scraped over the line. Scraped over the line is my observation about the election. And having done the pendulum and had a look at the 10 seats under 5%, I think, Councillor Cummings, to coin your phrase, I don't think it's just Councillor Wines who needs to be enjoying their their term here, but there are quite a number of other councillors who are sitting on very, very tiny margins. Now, there are a few councillors that actually did really well. I just observed Councillor McLaughlin, so I can see why Councillor Howard fought very hard to retain that part of Newstead that she lost to Councillor McLaughlin, because his primary vote went up big time, and up to 63, I think it was. So he did extremely well. And Councillor Griffith, his vote up to 20% on the two-party prefer as well. So well done to Councillor Griffith. And I see all the Labor councillors managed to increase their vote, as did Councillor Shree in the Gabba. So my observation with all of this is that it's very unfortunate when the LNP think that they have a mandate to do whatever they want. I just say to all of the LNP councillors out there, particularly the 11 out of 20 of you, where people in your wards voted for someone other than you, through you, Mr. Chairman, of course, that this is something that you should take into account when you are making decisions on behalf of the city. It's not just about supporting the LNP and supporting your party. You need to be fair to all people in the city of Brisbane, and certainly to residents in my ward, for example, who miss out on pretty much everything because they vote for me. So I would just say to you, use caution. You are there for the grace of a few extra votes and falling across the line with your 2PP vote. But residents in 11 of 20 of your wards wanted somebody else. And I would ask the Lord Mayor and all the LNP councillors to take into account the fact that this city is made up of people with really divergent views, and those views should not be ignored because their own party position is what is driving them forward without consultation with others, without consideration of others. That is not a good way to govern the city. That is how you governed last term, and your vote has fallen citywide by about 4% or just under 4%. And I think there is a very serious message in there for you. While she might have retained your numbers, you scraped over the line.
All right, further speakers. Councillor Shree.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to speak a little bit more briefly about the opportunities presented to us by the pandemic shutdown and the surge we're seeing in active transport around the neighbourhood, and to place very clearly on the record my support for temporary trials of separated bike lanes along more of the major corridors around my electorate. I note that before the council election, Councillor Cunningham identified that the Stanley Street corridor in particular was a really good opportunity for separated bike lanes, and I strongly endorse that position, and I agree that Stanley Street is a really good opportunity for some separated bike lanes. For councillors who don't know, that eastern end of Stanley Street, it's a very wide part of the corridor, and it has the existing width to accommodate separated bike lanes in many cases without even losing any street parking. You would just have to slot the bike lanes in alongside without actually taking away parking. So Stanley Street East in particular, I think, is a really important missing link to connect the existing Wollongabba bikeway through to the Norman Creek bikeway. And I think there's a really positive opportunity there that should be explored further. Similarly, I've obviously been advocating already for separated bike lanes along Vulture Street between West End and Wollongabba. And again, I think that's a really positive opportunity that we should be exploring closely, and actually listen to the community, because the community is telling us loud and clear that in the inner city, they want more space for cycling. They want more space for pedestrians. Pedestrians don't like having to share narrow footpaths with fast-moving e-scooters. And the solution there is simply to create separated bike lanes that can be used by cyclists and fast-moving e-scooters, rather than them having to share the narrow footpath with pedestrians or to share busy and dangerous roadways. So I'm looking forward to the coming term of council and working closely with Councillor Murphy in particular to achieve some positive outcomes in this respect. But I just want to flag to the administration in general, I'm very happy to work collaboratively and willing to come to the table. And my concern is that in the past, unfortunately, the administration has sometimes rushed consultation processes or undergone a form of consultation which I think hasn't been particularly effective at winning public support, and in some cases was actively damaging. And so I hope that the administration will be open to relying on my advice and insight as a local councillor about what projects are likely to get support. In the past, there have been projects in my ward where the council has said, we want to go out to consultation with this. And I've said, I don't support the project. I don't think the community is going to support the project. And then the council has still proceeded to go out to consultation on it. And then, surprise, surprise, there's been a really strong public backlash, and that's wasted a lot of time and money for council officers. It's generated a lot of additional correspondence. So just wanting to flag that I feel I have a good read of my community's values. I'm not pretending it's a homogenous community. I know that there's a diversity of views locally, but I would encourage and ask the council administration to work with me closely and to bounce ideas off me and develop consultation plans collaboratively with me, rather than using a stock standard consultation approach that's determined by the administration and then tends to cause further division in the community going forward. And just briefly, in terms of other opportunities around active and public transport, I also want to again highlight the importance of the new CityCat terminal for the western side of West End. Unfortunately, this project seems to have dropped off the council agenda to some extent because the council administration fails to comprehend how densely developed West End in particular is becoming. The South Brisbane Riverside Neighbourhood Plan from back in 2010 identified the need for a new CityCat terminal at the western side of the West End Peninsula. And I think that need is now growing stronger and stronger. We've seen increasing traffic congestion along a lot of our major corridors, and there's certainly really strong community support for creating another high-capacity public transport option for that western side of the peninsula. Now, I know the council is looking for infrastructure projects that will generate job opportunities while also delivering a positive benefit for the community. The West End CityCat terminal has very, very strong public support. We already obviously have the standard terminal designs, and so to some extent there's not going to be the same need for long-term public consultation and back and forth discussions about whether to go ahead with it and how the terminal should be designed exactly. We've already done a lot of that initial consultation, and we know that a CityCat terminal would be widely supported by the community. So rather than kicking the can further down the road, I think now when the council is looking for infrastructure projects that are close to shovel ready, maybe we should have another look at that Victoria Street CityCat terminal proposal. I'm mindful that some in the administration might be of the view that we should wait until the footbridges are designed and complete before we start looking at other transport options for the peninsula, but I don't think that's an appropriate strategy. I think the proposal for a footbridge between West End and Toowong and the proposal for a new CityCat terminal are complementary rather than mutually exclusive. They fill different public transport roles and move people in different ways and in different directions. So long term, that western side of West End is going to need both a footbridge to Toowong and additional high capacity public transport options. And unless there's some plan to send the metro down Montague Road, which I think is going to be very expensive and difficult given the constraints of that corridor, a CityCat terminal is probably one of our best options. And to my mind is the option that's going to have the most community support. So I want to again encourage the administration that in the coming budget session to at least consider putting some funding towards studying that proposal, maybe a simple business case or initial evaluation to double check whether that's still a good idea. It wouldn't take much, just allocate a little bit of staff time to explore the idea in greater depth. But certainly I think there's very strong community support for the proposal. It was identified as necessary in the South Brisbane Riverside Neighbourhood Plan. And I think now is a really good time to proceed with those kinds of public transport infrastructure projects. They're going to get ticks all round. So it's a win-win idea. I might leave it at that, but thanks for listening.
I might go to Councillor Cumming first, and then I'll go to Councillor Adamant. Councillor Cumming, can you hear us?
I can, yes.
Now, you have an option. You can either continue from the Northgate section of your speech, or you can read it all again.
I'm happy to just go Northgate, if that's okay. I don't want to...
Welcome to proceed from there.
Yep.
And can you just every now and then just look it up?
Yes.
Just in case, please. Thank you. Please proceed.
You ready?
Please go ahead, Kip.
Ready. Northgate, the other very close result for the second election in a row was Northgate. Councillor Adam Allen won with 51.85% of the vote, which was a margin of 839 votes. Councillor Allen's margin in 2016 was 778 votes. Now, Councillor Allen, I have been in this chamber for quite a while. I could point out numerous examples of successful local councillors. They get elected by a small margin in their first term, then work their ward hard and turn their margin around to about 10% at their second election. Councillor Allen, in your first term, you managed to get an increase of 61 votes. In short, you have gone nowhere. Now, Councillor Allen, I place you in the same category as Councillor Wines and urge you to enjoy your last term in council. Now, there is another issue I need to raise in relation to Enoggera and Northgate wards. That is the issue of compulsory preferential voting, or CPV as it is known. CPV is the system used at Commonwealth and state elections. It means you have to fill in all but the last square on your ballot paper. It means you have to make a choice between each of the candidates as to who's your first, second and third, etc. preferences. CPV at council level is state Labor Party policy, and it was included in draft legislation to amend the City of Brisbane Act. It seemed to be all set to be announced and then it was abandoned. Those involved in the BCC Labor campaign were devastated and there were consequences. The number of exhausted votes in both Enoggera and Northgate were such that under CPV, the Labor candidates would have won each ward. In Northgate, this is the second election in a row that this has occurred. Now, these are not the only wards where CPV would have made a difference. In the ward of Paddington, the Greens candidate would have won. Councillor Peter Maddock fell over the line by 311 votes, which is a paltry margin of 50.71% to 49.29. Subsequently, Councillor Maddock is not in the Civic Cabinet. This could be for non-performance or having to hide to stand against Councillor Schrinner for the Lord Mayoral position. But I have another reason. Councillor Maddock knows if he stands again in Paddington, he will lose. In political terms, he is terminal. So Councillor Maddock will be retiring sometime in the last 12 months before the 2024 election because he knows if he stands again in Paddington, he will lose. At least Councillor Maddock has had several terms on E&C. The same could not be said for Councillor Fiona Hammond in Marchant, who was dumped after one term in E&C. Now, I thought this was a bit rough on Councillor Hammond. Sure, her committee was something of a blood sport in the last term. It was mainly Councillor Hammond.
Point of order, Councillor Shree.
Will Councillor come in and take a question?
No. Councillor Cumming, will you take a question?
No, just getting in the flow of my speech. Sorry, Councillor Shree.
He's declined, Councillor Shree. Please proceed.
It was mainly Councillor Hammond's blood having been drawn by Councillor Johnson. Also, Councillor Hammond's votes on the slide. In 2012, it was 66.89%, more than 2 to 1, two-party preferred. In 2016, it was 58.27, a drop of 8.62%. And in 2020, it was 54.98, a further drop of 3.29%. With a track record like that, perhaps E&C was not a good option. Perhaps changing her name from King to Hammond was not a good choice. Perhaps voters did not know who they were voting for. I doubt Councillor Hammond will face the electors in 2024. Finally, I wish to deal with the ward where Labor achieved its greatest swing of all, Callum Vale. Now, talk about a strong trend against a sitting councillor over several terms. Well, Councillor Owen takes the cake. In 2012, she received 67.06% of the two-party preferred vote. In 2016, she received 64.74%. But in this election, her vote collapsed to 52.23, a swing of 12.51%. Now, Councillor Owen, this takes some explaining. Did it have something to do with the finding against you in relation to cab charge? I know it had a lot to do with the excellent campaign run against you by Labor's James Martin and many members of the local community. Did it have something to do with your racing to desert local government at the drop of a hat and run for the federal seat of Moreton at the 2019 federal election? Or what about closing Illawina Street against the advice of the engineers? The finding by the CCRP was that the complaint against you was substantiated.
Councillor Cumming, can you please refer to councillors in the third person, please?
Sorry. The finding against Councillor Owen by the Council Complaints Review Panel was that the complaint was substantiated and proven in relation to a complaint of misconduct, that you are found to have engaged in misconduct, and that in the exercise of discretion it was ordered and directed by way of sanction that you received from the Chief Executive Officer counselling with respect to the misconduct and how not to repeat such misconduct, with specific instruction and counselling upon the role, ethics and duty of being a councillor in local government and the primacy of the public interest. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall to listen to that. And of course, you've also ordered to make an apology to myself and an apology to councillors at the council meeting, which you've done today. Now, Councillor Owen, Mr. Martin will be on your case for the next 4 years, so I would be very aware of Mr. Martin's campaigning. Other poor results for the LNP were Bracken Ridge, where Labor's Kath Palmer achieved a 6.43% swing over Council Landers to reduce Council Landers' margin to 54.15%. Council Landers has had 12 months to establish herself in the ward, but apparently the voters don't particularly like what they see. The same could be said for Councillor Mackay in Walter Taylor, where the LNP vote dropped 12.58% against the Greens to 53.94. Now, Councillor Mackay is no Councillor Simmons, but in 12 months he has turned Walter Taylor into a marginal ward. The Greens will be hoping you keep up the good work, Councillor Mackay, and that you hand Walter Taylor over to them on a plate in 4 years' time. Thank you.
Councillor Adaman. Now, councillors, I would remind you all that this is Councillor Adams' first or maiden speech, and I ask you to be quiet and offer him the courtesy of silence through his maiden speech. Councillor Adaman, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm proud and humbled to speak here today for the first time as the new councillor representing the Pullenvale ward under the banner of the Queensland Liberal National Party. This and Councillor Hutton's maiden speech next week are being delivered in unique circumstances via video conference, which might be a first in Australian political history, but we do live in unique times. Let me start by thanking the majority of residents in my ward who put their trust in me to represent them in City Hall for the next 4 years. It's an unbelievable honour to serve, and my pledge to everyone, irrespective of who they voted for, is to work hard and tirelessly in their interests and not let them down. I am also proud to be a member of Team Schrinner, and I congratulate the Lord Mayor on what he achieved on the 28th of March. To win the Lord Mayoralty vote the way he did was one thing, but to retain all 19 wards is another. Your message, Lord Mayor, that experience matters in such times clearly resonated with the electorate. But winning another term after 16 years of continuous LNP administration in City Hall is a monumental achievement and something of which you can be very proud. I come into the role of an elected public official at the most challenging time imaginable. Who would have thought at the start of my journey in late January that the world would look like it does at the moment? As the Lord Mayor reminded us after the election, we all needed to get back and work quickly as possible and do whatever we could in our communities to assist in Brisbane's recovery efforts. And that's what I've been doing, working with my fellow federal and state representatives, local community groups and leaders to identify those at most risk who need help. Mr. Chair, my life and professional experience has prepared me well for the challenges that await. I come from a simple background, being born and bred and educated in Kingaroy, and living on a farm for a number of years. My working career began in country and regional newspapers and television before moving to Brisbane to pursue my dream of becoming a state government ministerial press secretary. After 8 years in that role, I evolved into a communications and marketing executive in the corporate world, which I did until seeking pre-selection for this ward. In 1991, my wife Sina and I built our home at Chapel Hill, raised our family, and we still live there today. We part-owned and managed a small business at Kenmore for about 5 years and have been active in local school and community groups, building many friendships that will last a lifetime. I am proud to be a member of the Kenmore Rotary Club and intend remaining so and helping out with the outstanding work they do whenever I can. I'm also proud to be a life member of the Kenmore Bears Junior AFL Club, despite the fact I've never kicked an AFL ball in my life. Together with a number of other local parents, we helped save what was a battling club, and I look forward with pride seeing how the current group of volunteer parents have taken it to another level. During my campaign, I engaged with a number of local community groups, including the Kenmore Bears, to hear about their issues and expectations, whether it was the ladies' aquatic group at the Bellbowery Pool or the locals concerned about council's plans for the Merry Merry Dog off-leash park. It was important to learn what mattered to them. I promised then and will honour my undertaking to be available, transparent, consultative and accountable as their local representative. And I won't advocate a position to council until I'm certain about what my constituents think first. It was pretty obvious early into my campaign what the main issues were. In no particular order, the proposed Bellbowery Green Bridge, traffic congestion on Moggle Road, improved public transport services, and the need for a local community centre. Given that three of those have a common theme, I was excited to be appointed to Council's Public and Active Transport Committee. I look forward to working with my colleague, Councillor Murphy, as its chair, to determine the strategy for how we can take these services to another level, not only in my ward, but for our great city. Mr. Chair, in the remaining time available, I would like to acknowledge those who helped me get to where I am today. As I indicated earlier, I am proud to have been given the opportunity to represent my community under the banner of the Liberal National Party. I was born into a strong Conservative family, which has a proud history of serving the community, country and party in its various forms during the past 70 years. My grandfather, Sir Charles Adderman, was a long-serving minister in the Menzies government and was my first political hero and mentor. My Uncle Evan also had the honour of serving as a minister in the Fraser government. I was fortunate to have lived with my grandfather during my senior high school years and when I started work as a cadet journalist at the local newspaper. I always thought life was pretty normal, but when I think back to those days, what was normal about answering the phone every night to find the Premier on the other end of the line? Or getting home from school and finding the soon-to-be Deputy Prime Minister Doug Anthony sitting at the kitchen table. His values align very closely with those of the LNP and which I strive to live by every day. And I'll never forget the role he played during my formative years. I've been fortunate during the past 28 years to have worked for a number of blue chip companies, including Telstra, Foxtel, the International Management Group, and most recently ASM Global, previously known as AEG Ogden. ASM Global is the leading venue management company in the world with its Southeast Asian headquarters here in Brisbane. In this city alone, ASM Global manages Suncorp Stadium, the Brisbane Entertainment Centre and the Brisbane Convention and Exhibition Centre, and is the proponent behind the exciting Brisbane Live proposal, which will be a key part of the revitalisation of the entertainment hub in the CBD. The past 17 and a half years serving as both ASM Global Communications Manager and Director of Communications and Marketing at Suncorp Stadium were among the most enjoyable and rewarding of my life. The Chairman and CEO, Harvey Lister, who would be known to many of you, is a true visionary and a wonderful asset to this city. And his business partner of 40 years, Rod Pilbeam, both gave me their blessing to pursue this role. I will be forever grateful for the opportunity they gave me to work in such a dynamic and exciting industry, albeit one that's doing it tough right now, not being able to host events of any sort. I particularly enjoyed being part of a team charged with securing new event content for our venues, hence my interest and passion in what event tourism can bring to Brisbane. Event tourism is worth about $800 million to the state economy. It's a highly competitive industry, and our challenge is to become a lot more creative in how we secure major events without breaking the bank to do it. And I hope to be able to contribute in that area going forward. To those who helped me get elected, to my campaign manager and confidant, Paul McMonigal, who rode every high and low of the emotional roller coaster with me, a huge thank you. To my campaign team, that great Liberal stalwart of the Western Suburbs, Lee Warren, Julian Simmons, Dr. Christian Rowan, Madeline Simmons, Alison Richards, and Margaret DeWitt, OAM. The support, encouragement, and strategic advice from Julian and Christian from day one was invaluable. Their efforts won't be forgotten, and I look forward to working closely with them to achieve great outcomes for our communities. To Margaret, who was an outstanding advocate for our community during her 19 years as the Pullen Vale Ward Councillor. Her high profile during the campaign and her offer to mentor me as I settled into the chair she once occupied is much appreciated. To my colleagues, particularly Councillors Mackay and Murphy, for their regular calls, offers of assistance, pep talk and advice, thank you. We all know elections aren't won by individuals. It's a team effort, and I had one almighty team in my corner. And I should have mentioned the 100 plus volunteers who donated, roadsided, letterbox dropped, stood on pre-poll and at public events with me. Thank you. And finally, to my immediate family, my mother Jeanette and sister Meryl in Toowoomba, my brother Steve in Hobart, and my wife Sia, and sons Andrew and Nick, who are witnessing this today, who keep me who keep me grounded and humble. Like my campaign manager, Sia rode every emotion of the 3-month campaign, but never flinched. She could have easily taken the option of saying no to me seeking pre-selection, but she knew what this opportunity meant to me, and I know that she will be standing alongside me, providing invaluable support in the challenging times that lie ahead. Mr. Chair and fellow councillors, thank you for your indulgence. I look forward to serving with each and every one of you for the betterment of this wonderful city that we all call home. Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome and welcome. Councillors, are there any further matters of general business? Councillor Strunk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Listen, I'm rising to speak this afternoon.
Councillor Strunk?
Yes?
Can you please check your microphone?
It is okay. Can you not hear me?
I can't hear.
All right. Well, I can hold.
Excuse me. Please go ahead. My mistake.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. So everyone can hear me now. Thank you. I just want to rise to speak this afternoon in regards to one item, and that is some local heroes and groups within my ward that are making a huge difference during the pandemic that we're all suffering from at the moment. Specifically, I want to talk about 4 organizations that are leading the way in my ward in regards to helping the community with what they need at this time. The Anala City Point Church, under the leadership of Pastor Tim McDonald and other pastors in the church as well, are looking after a large number of families as they had done prior to the pandemic hitting this country. They look after a lot of foodstuffs that the community are needing. Before the pandemic, were looking after 1,200 families. I can suggest now that it's probably closer to 2,000 families and growing every week. They also give free food away during normal times, which is just unbelievable how they're able to do that. The Grace Church also has a cafe or a restaurant here in the Civic Centre, and all that money that they raised at the cafe or the restaurant, currently, of course, it's all takeaway, plow back into their community and the general community as well. They just undertook a remodeling of their restaurant just prior to the pandemic, so they are really doing it tough at the moment, but they look after the community, which is just laudable. The Forest Lake Uniting Church, I don't know what we would do without Reverend Russell when it comes to those people, those individuals that need help from time to time. And our first call is usually when we have someone that's homeless or someone that is found themselves in a situation that they cannot cope, whether it's through counseling, if they need counseling, or just a helping hand with a little bit of money. Reverend Russell over at the Uniting Church is the first person to put his hand up and to look after that individual or that family. Finally, the Vietnamese community, the Vietnamese chapter in Australia, Queensland chapter, I should say, under the leadership of Dr. Bui, Q1, and Vincent Du, are doing fantastic work in their cultural community as well as the general community as well, with food deliveries, posting mail, just doing some shopping and gardening, and they just ring up to find out if people are doing it all right. So luckily, Channel 7 rang us today and said, listen, could you nominate a couple of organizations that we could talk to under their Everyday Hero segment, which is running tonight. And we were able to grab a hold of quickly someone from the Grace Church and, of course, Reverend Russell at the Forest Lake Uniting Church. So I hope that that segment tonight is going to give people in my ward and other wards as well to show that we really do care. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further items of general business? Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I couldn't let that contribution from Councillor Cumming go because it was honestly it was way too good. So I also want to reflect on the outcome of the 2020 council election. And I want to start by just reflecting on a Brisbane Times article that I have here that I've kept. And it reads like this, and I'll quote directly. A Labor councillor hoping to enter state politics has predicted the party will lose at the state election and boasted that his experience in opposition would be an asset. Now, this was written in 2011. Brisbane councillor and Labor member Peter Cumming wrote off his own party in a letter to Labor members, the 10 Network reported. I'm a realist and expect Labor to lose the state election, the letter read. I have the experience of being in opposition.
Again, we've lost sound, Mr. Chairman.
Have we?
I haven't.
No.
Please proceed.
I have the experience in being in opposition to capitalise on the likely slash and burn approach that Newman would pursue as Premier. Now, this was in 2011. We're now in 2020. Councillor Cumming had been in opposition the entire length of his career to that point and has remained in opposition the entire length of his career to this point. And I think tonight we have seen absolutely why that is. To go to an election after 16 years in government and to be re-elected, not losing a single councillor, is an incredible feat for us, this administration, this LNP administration, and the Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner. But it is a far more miraculous feat for the Labor Party, who after 16 years have consigned themselves to 20 years in opposition, and you see why tonight. Councillor Cumming spent his speech bagging out LNP councillors who have been in Civic Cabinet, many who have been in Civic Cabinet for a decade. And this is a man who has spent no time in Civic Cabinet, no time ever making hard decisions that need to be made when you are in these roles, but is happy to attack personally those people for the contribution that they have made to the City of Brisbane, the contribution that they have made to their wards, and then to goad them about losing their seats when it was the Labor Party and the Labor Party's strategy which caused so many of their own candidates to fail to win those seats is just truly breathtaking and extraordinary. And it's bizarre, Mr. Chair, that it was Councillor Cumming that had to get up and to do what we just saw. I honestly would have thought Councillor Cassidy would have fronted up and done that himself. He is, after all, the leader of the opposition. The conduct of Labor's campaign is his responsibility. And I really feel for Councillor Cumming, because it was Councillor Cumming and Rod Harding who were rolled by Councillor Cassidy and Patrick Condren to bring in this new leadership team and the new winning strategy, a strategy which failed, which the people of the City of Brisbane saw through, because when they got there, they didn't spend any time developing policy. They didn't spend any time, going out on a roadshow and talking to the residents of the City of Brisbane and asking them what they wanted to see. They spent all their time throwing mud and muck and trying to drag our councillors through the dirt. And I think you see the results of that strategy laid bare. So tonight, Councillor Cumming, in fantastic style, you have shown just perfectly why Labor continue to languish in opposition after so long in this place, because there continues to be no learning moment for you, no epiphany, no wake-up call as to the style and the strategy that you adopt here in this place and out in the community. I think you should be ashamed of that speech you gave tonight, and you should seriously reflect on bringing those kind of speeches, particularly when we have a new councillor giving a maiden speech, before you do anything like that again.
Further items of general business? There being none, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, everybody.